I met Kamala at the Olympic Auditorium when my dad was friends with one of the referees. Show you how bad a parent my dad was. He takes me to this wrestling event and leaves me alone backstage at a WWF event, with Pat Patterson running around. I mean, out of control. And I see Kamala getting ready to go home, I guess. And he's taking off his makeup and he's putting on like a polo shirt and like khaki pants. And I'm literally just staring at him. Like, it's like that scene in Fast Times where the kid's staring at Forrest Whitaker. Like, oh, I thought they just flew you in here for games. And he looks at me and goes, "Hello, young man, I'm James." I'm like, I thought your name was Kamala. And what are you doing speaking English? And then Kimchi came over, who I thought was Asian. That was his manager. And he takes off his safari helmet. And he's like, I think it was the Brooklyn Brawler. So I think he said, "Hey, I'm Steve." I'm like, my mind was blown. Like,
what's going on here?
Like, what? You could speak English? You're not Asian? What the hell's going on here?
Welcome, fellow lushes. Come on in, pull up a bar stool, and enjoy some cocktails with Dimples and the Beard.
Hey, how you doing?
Hello.
What's up?
How you doing?
Good. How are you?
Good. We love the picture that comes up for it's the oh man, what was his name?
Go in.
Kamala.
Let's say I know that. I remember that dude. Well, thank you for coming. I'm glad we got it worked out.
Yeah, sorry about that.
No,
I never got
that's quite all right. Yeah, I don't know, emails, whatever. So tonight we're talking to. I feel like
do it. Just do it.
Yeah, I feel like for introducing, I just have to say Earl motherfucking Skakel. I don't know why, but when I introduce you, that just feels like it wants to come out.
I mean, I have that effect on people.
And you are a comedian, actor, podcaster, and I saw you on Raylan Nelson's podcast, and we've had her on as well, and it was like, oh man, I wonder if he'll talk to us. So I reached out, and you
perfect.
Luckily for us said yeah. So we appreciate it. Thanks for coming on.
I'll pretty much talk to anybody, so don't feel too special.
All right. I didn't.
Well, I don't anymore.
Just kidding.
Okay. I mean, I'll get over it. No, I appreciate it. We're good. Where to begin with you, sir? You have been in the biz for quite a while. What haven't you done?
Porn, but
that we know of.
I've been offered to delve into that world, but passed many times. So, I mean, I've been doing comedy for so long. I really don't remember when I started. I mean, I'll guess around 99.
Yeah.
So,
Okay.
Did you kind of get started at the Comedy Store and the rest of the clubs around LA?
Well, I got started originally. My friends were all very high level agents and managers at like ICM, William Morris, and what would then become 3 Arts, which is a gigantic management company.
Okay.
And they were all like, "Earl, you'd be the funniest person on our client roster. Just start doing open mics and we'll help you." And then as soon as I started doing open mics, literally all but one left the business to get into real estate.
Oh, shit.
And he's still in the business today.
Okay.
But I started at the Comedy Store and I just wasn't ready because the first time I did the Sunday night open mic, there was a comic by the name of Brody Stevens.
Yeah.
Who's iconic in comedy in general, but especially in Los Angeles comedy. He was,
yeah, for sure. You can't hear about the store without hearing his name. So
yeah, no, it's hard to explain to people his iconic stature because he was like the band Motorhead. He should have been more famous.
Yeah, sure.
But if you did comedy in LA, you knew who he was. And he was hosting one night, and I walk in the room, and there was a young comic on stage bombing pretty badly. But this was back in, I think, 2000, when the Comedy Store was not the club it is today.
Sure.
It was pretty empty, very dark. It was like being an 80s metal band in 1996. It was just like, this is pretty rough.
Yeah.
And the kid got off stage, and I can't do a good Brody impression, but he said, "Hey, where are you from, kid?" And the guy was like, and he said it so softly. He's like, "La Jolla." And Brody was like, "Well, that drive just got a lot longer." And the kid ran out literally crying. I've never seen him since. And so I was like, I don't think I'm ready for this place.
Chew you up and spit you out, huh?
Oh yeah, I mean, I'm pretty popular in the LA scene, so I think I would have survived looking back. But so I just started doing open mics and crappy booked shows and strip clubs where they would have shows called Giggles and Jiggles.
Perfect.
That's my kind of comedy show.
So that original night, did you end up going on or did you not?
No, I think I walked out because the guy after Brody, or the guy after that kid who cried, he goes on stage. And at the time there was it's like a shooter in the grassy knoll mic where the host from, the open mic would sit. And Brody, as we all know, had a very loud voice. And he was talking on the side mic to this girl he was trying to pick up on. And the guy who was on stage was like, "Hey, Brody, shut the fuck up." And Brody's like, "Hey, you can't talk to me like that. You got to be professional." And the guy is like, "I'll be professional when you shut up and start paying me," and walked off. So these are the first two comics I've seen at the Comedy Store. One kid cries, the other kid wants to attack Brody. And so I was like, I'm going to go other places, and I'm going to come back when I'm ready. And I didn't come back for 10 years. So.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Because it was, there was a very interesting person as the talent coordinator there. And, he was, if you're a Comedy Store fan, and this guy's been mentioned on many podcasts, Tommy was the talent coordinator. And,
sure.
Let's just say he had an interesting way of accounting for the money at the end of the night. Sometimes it would end up in his right pocket. So, and he had some very interesting views on certain elements of racial society.
Oh boy.
So I was just like, I'm gonna go try and get into the Improv or Laugh Factory instead. So it was a somewhat of a long journey, but about 2010, I started opening up for Rob Schneider.
Okay.
And that showed me the good side of the business.
How did you get involved with Rob?
Well, it's kind of like who was the guy who replaced Lou Gehrig at first base that day because he was sick? I want to say Wally Pip or something.
Something like that, yeah.
George Pip or something Pip. There was a comic who was supposed to open up for Rob, and he was sick. And now that I know this comic better, he was just too lazy to drive to Santa Monica. And he was like, "Do you want to open up for Rob Schneider tonight?" I'm like, "Sure." So I go there, and Rob had just started getting back into stand-up. Because I think people forget he started as a stand-up.
Okay.
But he got famous so fast that, I don't know why he stopped doing stand-up, but I'm sure it was like, I'm making a few $100,000 a week on TV. I'm not going to Florida to play the Chuckle Hut, so I went there, and I had a pretty good set. I mean, I'm 100 times the comic today than I was back then, but for that era of Earl, I had a really good set. And like Adam Sandler was watching, and I think David Spade was there, and Rob in the green room. And it was a pretty all-star green room. Just told everyone, "Hey, shut up. That guy over there," and he points at me, he's going to be famous one day. And it was kind of awkward because like Adam Sandler was looking at me like, who the fuck are you? I'm like, hey, he said it, bro. I didn't.
Yeah, right. Came out of his mouth, not mine.
Yeah, I mean, so that's and then I think 2014 I got on TV doing Roast Battle, and then it kind of done some things since then. So it's been a very long, winding journey.
Were you passed at the store before Roast Battles or after Roast Battles started?
What's funny, Roast Battle started right before I got passed.
Okay.
So I was actually very lucky because Roast Battle was really a hot show, just the weekly show. It was completely insane. And that's before Jeff Ross got involved.
Yeah.
And then the show started going downhill after that. Gee, what a shock.
Well, do we touch on that right away or?
Yeah, I was going to say, I dug up some videos of the like some amateur type videos of before it was on Comedy Central, and I saw the one of you and Joe Dorsch. Is his name Joe Dorsch?
Joe Dosch, who is now Fifi Dosch. He's switched over.
Okay, and that
she's awesome.
Yeah, that was a fantastic battle. It was so funny, and I like how you both turned on the judges at the end and just turned them apart.
Funny. That was a pretty, I don't want to say historic, like Roast Battle was like MASH or Miami Vice or the Cosby Show, but if you follow Roast Battle, which I hope you don't, so I'm like the ultimate warrior. I'm so bitter on that show, but that was a historic show because that's the battle that Comedy Central watched and thought, okay, this show could work on TV.
Yeah,
because it had a little bit of everything. It had two great battlers. It had the wave, which was, I can't say what, well, they called it the Negro wave. Well, actually, they called it something else. I think you can guess what.
Fair enough. Yeah.
So, and then the judges were all funny. And then I started attacking the judges. And then Joe in the clip, Fifi now, because I know there's rules when you talk about, I don't want to and Fifi is one of my dear friends. And then she joined me and we started attacking the judges. And I think Comedy Central was like, because every network in LA had passed on the show because I think they were like, okay, no one's gonna get two unknown comics talking about who they slept with and all this weird inside baseball.
Not a big enough audience for that stuff.
But I could kind of see their point, wouldn't it be better if we had, say, I don't know, Ralphie May, who I love. I still talk about him like he's alive. Ralphie May battle some other famous comic. But, if the celebrities aren't good at Roast Battle, it's a shitty show.
Yeah, absolutely.
Sure.
It's actually a better show with two people who are good at doing it.
The little bit, I know of it. It seemed like it's like a really great idea in concept because I think it's, such a fun thing to watch two guys rip on each other. But like everything else, it seemed like the network got, or the business got a hold of it and watered it down with celebrities, and it wasn't as funny anymore.
Did you have rules? Did they implement rules?
Well, yes, and some of them were good because back before Jeff and Comedy Central got involved, they had one rule where if two white comics were battling, now keep in mind the host of the show is black.
Yeah, yep.
The creator of the show, Brian Moses, is black.
Yeah.
But the rule was if two white comics are battling, each one could say the N-word once. And I mean hard ER version, not the GGA.
Yeah.
And not that one's better, for the record.
Right.
And it was just the most politically incorrect show you can imagine.
It seems like it.
At the time, I was the racist heckler, and because I wasn't battling at the time, because it's just not my sense of humor. I would say I more roast myself in
Sure.
my stand-up act. I didn't really like calling someone fat or a whore or hey, your nose is so big, blah blah blah. So I was doing the racist sidekick, and it was done in the vein of Archie Bunker.
Yeah.
Okay.
And one time there was this black guy. He comes up to me after the show. He's like, "Hey man, what's with all the racist bullshit?" I'm like, "Oh, it's a character like Archie Bunker." And he looks at me and goes, "Who the hell is Archie Bunker?"
Ooh.
And I'm like, "Hey Moses, this guy wants to talk to you." And I
He made me do it.
Yeah, and so well, the funniest part to me was looking back. They had a sign over my head that said "Whites Only," and I mean, it was insane back then. And someone forgot to take the sign down. So the next night there was a black show in the belly room, and all these black people were complaining about that sign because it still said whites only. And like the manager had a busy night that night deflecting.
Ouch. Yeah. Yeah.
Wow.
So you, it's funny you say this. You just said that you didn't feel you were good at the battle stuff, but you really were, or you didn't enjoy it.
Well, I mean, I think Comedy Central said to Moses and Jeff, "Hey, that guy's really funny in the corner, but we can't have that character on television.
Sure.
We have a thing called sponsors." And I think they said, "Can he battle?" And Moses said, "Do you want to start battling? Because they want you on the TV show, but you can't. They don't want that."
That character. Gotcha.
So I think they put me up. They started putting me up against people they wanted to see win.
Okay.
Thinking, well, if Earl loses, who cares? He doesn't really battle. And then I started beating everyone they put in front of me because I'm a huge '80s wrestling fan. So I thought, well, if I'm not comfortable calling someone fat or whatever, maybe I could do it as a character almost. So I was basically ripping off the wrestler Rick Rude,
Yep.
who, if younger fans, people who like John Cena probably don't know who Rick Rude is, but he just had this beautiful body and would go out there and call people fat and ugly, and he would do this thing where he would kiss an audience member, and usually they were a pretty hot girl, and before he would pick the hot girl, he'd point out a fat girl in the crowd and go, "Not tonight, honey." And so I thought, I'll do it like that. And so, because I had to find some way to mask, I felt like so many of my favorite '80s metal bands, most of those guys, like C.C. DeVille from Poison, he's a classically good trained. Jack, he's a classically trained guitar player. But, I'm sure he wasn't making any money playing Beethoven scales.
Right.
So he thought, well, I'll just dye my hair blonde, play a pink guitar, and now he's a multimillionaire. So I did it in the vein of, I sold out a little bit, but
but
It
is
worked.
it? I mean, because of your love for wrestling, I mean, you're kind of playing a character, but it's in your wheelhouse. It's what you love, right? So, I mean,
yeah.
in your intros alone were almost as good as the battle itself.
Well, the one battle I had with Jimmy Carr, who's, he's one of the top 5, I don't know if famous is the right word, but known comics in the world. He plays venues overseas that the Killers play, just to give you the scale of his celebrity. And, I won my battle with him, which really pissed off Jeff and Comedy Central because they wanted him to win it.
Sure.
Because I think 2 weeks later, the Rob Lowe roast was on Comedy Central, and Jimmy was on the dais. So they wanted to. It would have been a nice cross promotion. Hey, here's roast battle champion Jimmy Carr, and I told them not to do that, but they didn't listen to me. So because I'm very competitive. So, and I knew that they wanted me to get killed by not just Jimmy, but the first guy I battled. My first TV battle was against the Comedy Central writer. And,
Oh, okay.
He write this guy. he wrote jokes for Jeff. He was the head writer on At Midnight, which was a big show at the time on Comedy Central. He wrote on every Comedy Central roast. Like, he was the first person to get a phone call like, hey, we're gonna roast Rob Schneider, and we're gonna call Jesse first. So and I kind of embarrassed him on TV because I do my research. Like, I'm a maniac. If you had an abortion, I'm gonna find out about it, and I'm gonna interview the doctor. I'm gonna interview the fetus. I'm gonna interview everyone associated with that abortion. And so it's funny, like, if you go back, it's the only battle I will tell people to watch of mine. It's my battle with Jesse Joyce.
Okay.
I
so
knew
nothing's off limits, is what you're telling me.
Well, I respect Jesse Joyce so much as a comic. I went up to him before our battle because his best friend was Greg Giraldo, who committed suicide, unfortunately. And I said to him, hey, is there anything that's off limits?
Okay.
And he knew what I was asking. Basically, I was asking without saying, can I do Giraldo jokes? And if he would have said, hey, I'd appreciate it if you didn't do jokes about Greg, I wouldn't have done it.
Yeah.
But I was a master strategist on that show. So, and the belly room was on fire that night. I mean, it was completely oversold. It was you're wearing a Kiss shirt. It had the energy of a Kiss concert in that room. It was one of the most. I'm still high off of that, and that's 2015.
Jesus, yeah.
The judges that night were Jimmy Kimmel, Joe Rogan, Dane Cook.
Jesus.
And Jeff. Yeah, of course, Jeff would be up there, but and I knew Jesse was very long-winded. I mean, he is a jokesmith. Like, he if you watch that battle, you'll notice he came on the stage with like 12 pages of jokes. I had 5 in my head. If I was going to come with, if they were said, Earl, you need to do a 6th joke, I would have tapped out. I wouldn't have had one. But I knew if I made Jesse go first, he would do a very long-winded joke. Because roast battle's different. It's more quick. Hey, you're so fat.
Right.
You look like Ralphie May. Oh,
yeah.
Jesse did this probably minute and a half joke where at one point it was so long, Joe Rogan, who's judging, was like, hey, dude, that's like 2-3 jokes. And then him and Jesse kind of start arguing. And I was like, just don't say anything. Just sit there and stare at the camera like Cindy Brady. Just stare. And then Joe's like, Earl, do your joke. And I looked at him like, wow, Jesse, that joke was longer than your first marriage. And it's not the greatest joke in the world, but for that moment, and the room blew up like Kiss doing an encore. And I look over, and every Comedy Central executive from New York and LA was in the VIP area, which was stage right. And they all, like they were marionettes, their jaws were dropping. And they were like, and then my second joke killed. I rarely kill. I usually do well, but it killed. And I look over again, and every Comedy Central exec, literally everyone was like, and
not what we wanted.
Then I was like, oh. And then I went full Rick Rude, Ric Flair. I was a maniac. I mean, I've never done a drug or drink in my life, but I was so naturally high from those 2 jokes doing well. And I think they cut this part off of television, those bastards. I said, hey, if the Comedy Central travel guy is here, I fly first class. I want 2 kosher meals. I'm not even Jewish. I just want to stick it to this network. And Jesse, do your next joke, bitch. And like, Dane Cook was like, I feel like I'm watching a video game where one of the players' controllers are broken. And so, it was all downhill from there.
I imagine it's got to be, you're talking, you were battling a writer. It's got to be a totally different muscle to say it out loud and to write it down on a piece of paper. Like, I don't feel like that would translate well.
But he had done stand-up before, did he? Or
Oh, he's a great stand-up.
Okay.
okay.
And it's funny, we're friends. I mean, I haven't seen him since that night, but you know, we're comedy friends. And I just think it was told to me before the battle. I had a mole at Comedy Central who would feed me intel, and he's like, you know why you're battling Jesse, right? Because at the time my girlfriend was also on the show, and I thought, well, why don't you just put us together? That would show you what the battle is about. Because we had already had a battle. We did an alternative festival a couple months beforehand, and it was a bunch of big comics battling, and then me and my girlfriend at the time, and we stole the show because we were hard on each other, and we broke up about 2 months later. But I mean, she's making fun of my dick, and I'm talking about her pussy stinks, and like, but it was back and forth. It was like watching a prize fight. And so when they put me up against Jesse, I'm like, why am I battling him? We should just do a repeat of my battle with my girlfriend at the time. And they're like, well, they consider Jesse kind of boring presentationally. Like, he's just going to go up there, read his jokes, and look at you. But they know you'll go up there in the leather pants and the oiled up body, and you'll do something with the wave. Where I think I put one of the wave in the Triple H's finisher, the pedigree, and I actually did it to him, and I thought I heard him. Because if you notice in that battle, I put him in the pedigree and stomp him on the ground, and he wasn't moving for a second. I'm like, "Hey, bro, you okay?" And
he was very committed to the biz.
100%. So then when I got they had to use me in Montreal. There was no way they could not have brought me because it was so good.
Yeah.
And then I got my bracket in Montreal, and I was like, oh shit, I'm being punished because everyone else got a warm-up battle. Basically a guaranteed victory.
Sure.
And then I looked at my bracket, and I had Tom Ballard, who is this brilliant Australian comic and a savage roast battler. I mean, they did an untelevised season of the show, like a test season, and he was killing everybody because he's gay and he gets it. He knows it's just going to be gay jokes, so he's very well prepared. And he was my first opponent, and then Jimmy Carr was my second opponent, and then my third opponent was Sarah Tiana, who's brilliant.
Wow. And
then my fourth opponent was K. Trevor Wilson, who's this legendary Canadian comic, and everyone else was getting like all these gimme matchups, and I'm like, the fuck did I do wrong? Like, I'm so competitive. I was like, I don't want any easy matchups, but if everyone else is getting one, I'd like one.
At least one, yeah.
And then I never got, at least one to like make me look good. But you brought up, I only tell that story because you brought up reading jokes versus off the top of your head. And because my battle with Jimmy is kind of controversial because I bombed on one joke because literally dead silence in the room, and we're on TV. I'm thinking there's millions of people watching. Well, it's Comedy Central, not millions, but like
good one.
I'm a couple. I mean, they don't know. They literally don't get millions. They get like 600,000-700,000 people or whatever. Sure. Still more people that have ever watched me do comedy than anywhere else. Jimmy reads his jokes, and I don't. I just, so it's kind of cheating what he does. But Jeff Ross is such a kiss ass. He lets Jimmy do it.
Yeah.
So I came out with a clipboard of my own, and I walked out there and I looked at Jimmy, and I was like, here's my clipboard, Jimmy. I don't need mine. Do you need yours, you limey bitch? And I threw it in the crowd. And that's how I won the battle. Even though I had a joke that bombed, that verse, it's not even a joke really, but the visual of, I basically called him out saying, hey, he reads his jokes.
Yeah.
Sure.
You already had the judges slanted your way at that point.
Well, not really. Jeff was a judge, so I knew he was going to vote for anyone else. I mean, him judging a comedy show is like, fucking Lorenzo Lamas judging the Oscars.
I take it there's some bad blood between you and Jeffrey Ross.
I can't stand him. He's an awful person.
Yeah.
Hey, Jeff likes to play guitar. He fingers in A minor. But so I knew I had to get David Spade and Kevin Hart's votes, because if it was a tiebreaker, Jeff would vote for Jimmy. So luckily, and then in my battle against, David Spade and Kevin Hart judged my battle against Tom Ballard, and against Jimmy Carr, it was Jimmy Kimmel and Seth Rogen.
Oh yeah.
Jimmy voted for me. He said something to the effect of, Jimmy Kimmel voted for me, and he said something like, well, Jimmy Carr reads his jokes, and Jimmy Carr was really funny. He's like, that's exactly what I'm doing. And then Seth Rogen was like, Earl, I like riding a roller coaster, and you had the higher highs, and you definitely had the lower lows. I'm going to vote for you. And Ross's face steam was coming out of that fat, bald head of his. Because he knew he couldn't do anything to reverse the decision.
Sure.
And,
yeah, so, I did. I like how Brian Moses gave him the chance. Like, your vote doesn't count, but what would you like to say?
Yeah. So, and he was so pissed, and I knew he was trying to come up with something on the spot, like, "Hey Earl, you want to go to overtime?" I'm like, "No, I'm good." And Jimmy just looks at me, and Jimmy Carr is a gigantic comic. He could care less about winning roast battle.
Yeah.
It meant a lot more to me than him. And all he said to me was, he whispered out of the side of his mouth, "Just don't hug me. This is a $5,000 suit." Because I had oil just dripping all over my body.
Oh, that's fantastic.
So, it should have been the week of my life being on TV. I think it was 5 nights and 6 days on Comedy Central, but it was really a miserable experience.
Yeah, that sucks, because I'll go back to the origin story. You were kind of involved in the origin of the whole roast battle at the Comedy Store, weren't you?
Oh, it was me, Moses, the two guys. The show started, long story short, and it's just insane that a big show started like this. Two comics wanted to get into a fist fight, and I forget the exact wording Moses used. He didn't say roast, but I think he said it's what they call it in the hood. He said, "You guys can slap with each other."
Okay.
So they battled each other essentially. And then the next week, no one wanted to do stand up. They were like, "Hey, can we do what they did last week?" And then the week after, a few more people were in the room. And then the week after, no one wanted to battle. So they asked me if I wanted to battle this homeless guy. And
a homeless guy?
What?
There's a lot of fat I'm trimming. There's a homeless guy at the Comedy Store. His name is Boone Shakalaka. And he is iconic to the Comedy Store, because if he showed up at the Improv or the Laugh Factory or the Ice House or any other comedy club in the world, the Cellar in New York, they would kick him out. They wouldn't even let him in the grounds. And but the Comedy Stores embraced him. Like, hey, this is a wacky club. It's kind of got like that bar in Star Wars vibe where we accept all freaks. And Boone was my first roast battle opponent. And you'd think it would be easy to beat him, but it's not easy battling crazy. He would just look at me, and because I have very thick glasses, I have a severe astigmatism, and he would just keep repeating, "You look like you have AIDS, visual AIDS." And that's all he kept saying. So it gave me nothing to go on. Because I'm like Floyd Mayweather. I'm a counter puncher with roasting. I know, because there's definitely a science to it. You got to know what they're going to joke on. Like, I'm 53, so I'm probably, to this day, the oldest person who's ever roast battled in terms of my actual age. So I know it's going to be age jokes.
Sure.
Earl's so old that blah, blah, blah. But, the odds are I'm going to look better than anyone I'm battling. So it sets me up for the rebuttals. Like when I would battle a fat, I battle this one guy. He's like, I don't know, 5'7", 350 pounds. And, his first joke was an age joke. Like, Earl's so old, they measured his birthday by carbon dating. And I'm like, you're going to be dead in 2 months. What are you talking about? Like, I don't know what works harder on you, your buttons or your heart. And so, I think the best battlers, and I'm talking of the amateurs, not the celebrity ones. Jeff's battle with Blake Griffin. I've seen fucking pro wrestling matches that were more believable.
Yeah.
Blake Griffin, the basketball player?
Yeah, Jeff battled in season 3, which I recommend nobody watch.
I think I remember that. Yeah, that was
battle
awful.
Blake. Well, it was clear they rehearsed the battle.
Yes.
Hey, I'm going to say this about you, and then you say this about me, and then we'll do some improv, and and Blake beat him. Like, that's the crazy thing, which is probably why they haven't done another season. Like,
yeah, I would imagine when a number 1 NBA pick is beating your comedian, that's got to be the end of it.
Well, in the history of the show, they've never done a tie before. But I think to save face for Jeff, they say, well, let's just call it a tie. Okay. That would be like me beating Blake Griffin in Game of Horse. It's like, okay, well, maybe Blake Griffin's not that good. But I will say this about Blake Griffin. He's incredibly nice. Like, he would show up to open mics. Now, here's this guy worth literally $300 million or whatever he's made in his career. And he would show up, he'd sit in the back of the open mic. He wouldn't ask for special treatment. He'd go on after 3 hours. All love for Blake Griffin.
Okay.
Wow.
Paid his dues.
Oh, a little bit.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Complete.
Wow. So with those at the store, did you know, how far in advance did you know who you were going to battle? You talked about research before.
Well, they would, like when I battled my girlfriend at the time at the alternative festival, our battle kept getting delayed for various reasons. And so I think we both had about 4 months on each other to prepare. So I had 406 jokes for her.
Holy shit.
But most of them horrible, by the way. Just
sure.
I'm like Kiss. I write hundreds of bad songs to get to the good ones. I'm a Kiss fan. So,
but when you hit that one, it's amazing.
Yeah, it's amazing.
And I narrowed from that. I would honestly break down those 406 jokes on her. I would say 300 were horrible. 50 were workable. Another 50 were very good. And then the final 6 I picked were home runs.
Yeah.
So that's not, when you have 6 home runs out of 400 plus jokes, that's not a great ratio.
Sure.
But then for like Tom Ballard, I had a week's notice. I had 107 jokes. And then, in Montreal, we had 4 battles in 5 days. So,
oh, wow.
I think for Jimmy Carr, I only had 25 jokes. And a lot of those were even just loose outlines of like, okay, he has a problem with his father. Maybe there's something there. They're separated, and, with Tom, it was a lot of surface level gay jokes.
Sure.
But I tried, since I knew Kevin Hart was judging, I thought, well, let me try and weave a gay and a black joke in the same, almost like cheating, get a double banger. So I think one of the jokes was Kevin Ballard or Tom Ballard is gay, so he's taking more shots to the back than Kevin's unarmed cousin. And Kevin Hart just looked at me and started giving me the "we're not worthy" sign.
Oh man!
Well, and that's the other thing. You do research, but people in the audience, do they know what you research? That they don't know the same facts that you do, so you have to. And this one may hit, but nobody's going to get it.
Yeah, especially on TV, when I didn't know, I had really only talked to Tom Ballard once in the untelevised show we taped, a year ago. I maybe had met Jimmy or talked to him maybe once. Jesse Joyce, I'd never really talked to before. I mean, I'm very good friends with Sarah Tiana, so that was a little easier to write for it because I knew her. And then Kate Trevor Wilson, I'd met once. So the TV battles were a lot harder because,
Yeah.
you know, I didn't really know most of my opponents.
And so I was thinking, watching these battles in general, like you were saying with you and your girlfriend at the time, how do you, it's all in jokes, but how do you not take some of that personally?
Oh, yeah. I mean, I battled 2 girlfriends before, and both times we broke up literally 2 months later because you know, I'm talking about, you know, how fat you are, and you know, obviously
Personal things.
I liked her, you know, so I had no problem with her appearance, but you know, my attitude with her was like, well, she's gonna say mean stuff about me. I can't just sit there and like, you know, so and so is great, because that was my problem when I battled Sarah Tiana. And it's why I lost, because I love her so much as a person. I was like, well, I don't want to be mean. I don't want to call her old or fat. And she's not old or fat.
Right. Yeah.
But, you know, with her, because I knew Sarah Silverman was judging our battle. And, you know, Sarah, I had heard, was not happy with all the age and body shaming jokes against her, I think, on the James Franco roast. So I was like, well, she's not going to like those jokes anyway. So I'm going to try and be more cute. Not really say anything mean, but just kind of like, I think one of the jokes I had against Sarah was like, Sarah's pussy is like a pool. A lot of people get in it. And at the end of the night, black guys ruin it for everybody. And yeah, it's a cute joke. But so you gotta, you know, it ain't compliment battle. You got to be mean.
Right.
That's what it's about. I mean, that's what people want to see. They want to see mean, and they want to.
Yeah, they want to see those train wreck, you know, body shaming. I mean, I don't know if the show will ever get on TV again, because it's just right now that in the this new era, you know, 2015, 2016, it was the perfect show. Like,
yeah,
right.
You could do rape jokes. You could do. There was one battler, he never got on TV, but he had HIV. And, you know, I think I said to him when I was still the heckler guy on the side, I'm like, dude, the only way you don't get AIDS is if they take those letters out of the alphabet. And I don't think you could do those jokes right now in 2022. It just.
The world is way too sensitive.
Yeah. No battles this year. No, that's for sure.
But the crazy thing is, the show, it's on tonight at the Comedy Store. So it's, I think locally, it's still a fun show for people to watch. Although I think they struggle now because, you know, the show got so big. I think after, you know, for season 1, people were like having watch parties. And,
yeah,
you know, I think one of the things that meant the most to me, you know, when you struggle so long in comedy, you kind of appreciate the little things. And right before my battle with Tom Ballard, my friend sent me a picture of the Comedy Store patio, and it looked like a mosh pit. You couldn't fit another person in that patio. And everyone was like, they're all here watching you, man. Good luck. And I almost started crying, to be honest with you, because it was just like, man, this is getting, you know, this is like, this is
a good feeling. Yeah.
Well, I was scared. It was even though we did the first TV battle was in the belly room, but you know, I'd always wanted to do Montreal. It's called the Just for Laughs Festival. I got rejected, I don't know, 4 or 5 times as a comic. So, you know, I will give Comedy Central this. When I walked out there for my first battle against Tom Ballard, I felt like a pro wrestler. Like, they had done an amazing job setting up what was an abandoned bar nightclub into Mad Max Thunderdome. It was amazing. And I almost flubbed my first joke against Tom because I looked in the front row and there was a guy and he had a shirt on and I thought it said Kiss Army because it was that same logo. But I looked and it said Skakel Army.
Oh shit.
And then I think they said, Earl, it's your first joke. And I'm looking at that and I'm like, oh, I had to snap out of it and go, Yeah, Tom's gay and lives on Australia. So when he takes it in the ass, he feels it the next day. And then, you know.
So speaking of pro wrestling and 80s pro wrestling, who was your guy?
I mean, it's funny. I do the Comedy Store Wrestling podcast too. And we had Fred Rosser on last night. He's the first openly gay pro wrestler. He was with WWE, and he also wrestled under the name Darren Young. And at the end, we did who our Mount Rushmore was. And, so it's so hard for me to pick just one.
So what is your Mount Rushmore?
It was even hard to pick that. I think I said last night Sid Vicious, because he was just he looked the part of an 80s heel, 6'8", 350 pounds, completely jacked. His promos made zero sense.
Wait a minute, he was a singer.
No, not the guy from the Sex Pistols.
I'm kidding. I'm not a wrestler, so that's where I was kidding.
His promos were so bad that it lent to his character of, he's insane. And the Ultimate Warrior was another one. Sting, who is still wrestling. That's
crazy.
Jeez. He's with AEW now, and he did a stunt, or however, I don't know what they call it, on the pay-per-view Sunday night, that for a 63-year-old man was completely insane. He jumped off of a balcony. I'll guess it was 100 feet onto the bad guys, and it was amazing to watch. So Rick Rude, it's insane when you consider that Scott Hall just died.
Yeah.
And he was 63. So Sting is still not just in the business still, but still competitive.
Yeah.
So I think that Rick Rude, was Abdullah the Butcher.
I remember Abdullah Butcher. Yeah.
He was funny.
I started comedy not to become famous or whatever, but I don't know. I just still love doing it. And being on TV has been cool, and all the things I've done that were moderately successful. But the thing that means the most to me is one night I get a package at the Comedy Store from a fan, and he sent me this, an Abdullah the Butcher.
Jesus.
Oh
yeah. That's badass.
You would think after struggling for 14 years to get on TV that getting on Comedy Central or the other shows I've been on would be my highlight, but it's getting that Abdullah the Butcher doll from a fan. That probably why I haven't fully made it in stand up yet, and that's my highlight.
We like what we like. I remember wrestling growing up for me. The first wrestlers that I really got into were the Road Warriors, Animal and Hawk. I love those guys. Yeah, they were great.
They were like a double version of the Ultimate Warrior.
Kind of. Yeah.
Well, the scary thing is those guys. They were all from Minnesota. So like Rick Rude, the Road Warriors, and Nikita Koloff.
The Russian.
I rarely tell people, and this is another reason my career is probably not where it should be. I'm sure you guys at the end, hey, Earl, where can people find you? Listen, if you go to the various places, great, but everyone should listen to Nikita Koloff's interviews when he's just being interviewed by wrestling podcasts, because he's talking in his American accent. And it is the biggest mind fuck to see this guy who I thought was from Russia, and spoke in that hammer and sickle, Hulk Hogan, I will destroy you. And then cut to these interviews today where he's, I was in Minnesota with the Rick Rude, and he's still a pretty big guy. So that was my first indicator of, wrestling's not real.
Yeah. Huh. Yeah, that was a kick in the ass when you were a kid. I didn't remember that day too when you finally.
It was worse than finding out about Santa Claus.
It was
to some kids.
It was.
Well, I think. No, go ahead. Go ahead.
Oh, I was gonna say I was in the Macho Man Savage, Paul Orndorff, Hulk Hogan era, and yeah, we watched so much of that stuff. So when you finally found out, it was
yeah, I mean, I was in that era probably a little before that actually. And like one of my favorites is Kamala, because I was so fascinated by that character, and this is before the internet, so you really couldn't look up. Okay, where's Nikita Koloff from? Oh, he's from Russo, Minnesota. Oh, okay, it's just doing a character. So there's no Wikipedia. There's no,
right.
You subscribe to the Wrestling Observer or Pro Wrestling Illustrated, and get a magazine a month or two later after the matches were 2 months old. So I met Kamala at the Olympic Auditorium when my dad was friends with one of the referees. Show you how bad a parent my dad was. He takes me to this wrestling event and leaves me alone backstage at a WWF event, with Pat Patterson running around. I mean, out of control. And I see Kamala getting ready to go home, I guess. And he's taking off his makeup and he's putting on like a polo shirt and like khaki pants. And I'm literally just staring at him. Like, it's like that scene in Fast Times where the kid's staring at Forrest Whitaker. Like, oh, I thought they just flew you in here for games. And he looks at me and goes, "Hello, young man, I'm James." I'm like, I thought your name was Kamala. And what are you doing speaking English? And then Kimchi came over, who I thought was Asian. That was his manager. And he takes off his safari helmet. And he's like, I think it was the Brooklyn Brawler. So I think he said, "Hey, I'm Steve." I'm like, my mind was blown. Like,
what's going on here?
Like, what? You could speak English? You're not Asian? What the hell's going on here? So that was my first, and I was 13 or whatever I was at the time, 12. So I was pretty devastated.
Yeah.
And then I think the next week there was a wrestler by the name of Eddie Gilbert, who, he's a white guy. He's kind of like a Bob Backlund type.
Oh, sure.
The good, goody two shoes white guy.
Yeah.
And he breaks his neck, and then 2 weeks later he's wrestling with no neck brace on. I'm like, this guy's recovery powers are out of this. Like, what?
Yeah. We thought they were
superpowers.
Yeah, we thought they were superheroes before superheroes. So.
Oh yeah, but I went to wrestling last. This is what I love about comedy. You get to become friends with the most strangest people on earth. I did the porn star Jasmine St. Clair's podcast.
Okay.
Perfect.
And she had dabbled in wrestling a little bit, and she called me up and said, "Hey, there's this thing, XPW, last Saturday night in Pomona. I'll set you up. You hang out in the locker room and all that stuff." I'm like, yeah, I'm still a wrestling fan. And they are more, because I went to some XPW shows in the early 2000s, and their shtick was, we're going to be more violent than ECW. Like, we are ECW with less money and no planning. And I saw the most violent match I've ever seen Saturday night. They call it
real? I saw pictures all bloody. Was that?
Yeah. Oh, that was real. That guy, the main event, they call it a death match. And was this guy named Shlak, SHLAK. I don't know if it has some hidden meaning. And Big F and Joe. And they had I don't even know how to describe it. At the end of the match, these guys looked like they had been shot 15 times. Just blood squirting everywhere. No EMT around. Schlack's wife was bandaging him up. So that was kind of fun it's a little too violent for me, but it's kind of neat to be backstage and hearing them before the match talk about, okay, you hit me here, and then I'll hit you with the light bulb, and then I'll throw the barbed wire around your head, and then I'll hit you in the chair. And it was fat. It was like being in the locker room listening to Tom Brady go over plays with Gronkowski. So I'm still a fan. So it was a nice night off of comedy to see two guys give each other CTE right before my very eyes.
Well, all I got was the Bushwhackers.
The Bushwhackers.
Oh yeah, Luke and Butch.
I don't know. Yes.
Oh, I remember those guys. Yeah.
I just would say people would watch it and I would be in the other room. If the Bushwhackers come on, let me know. I just want to see them come in.
Yeah, they were like the comic relief,
Yeah.
But back, they were in that era where it was still, people thought it was real.
No idea what years that was.
I mean, I think they were mid 80s, late 80s, early
Okay.
90s.
That's what I remember.
But I think you needed a comedy relief, because back then it was good guy versus bad guy, very black and white, Hulk Hogan versus Roddy Piper. The Piper's going to cheat for 90% of the match. Hulk Hogan's going to power up and beat him at the end. And, so I think, I don't know whose idea it was, but I'm sure someone was like, hey, we can't have all just, Superman versus, the Riddler.
Right. Yeah.
Gonna have some guys who would like make the kids laugh too. And, but getting back to Kamala for a second, when he would walk to the ring, the camera would show kids in the crowd and they were crying because they thought he was going to jump into the crowd. So you needed a humor character.
Was his finishing move? Didn't he just like jump off the ropes and sit on people?
Well, I will give whoever, yes, that was his finishing move. But what he would do, and this is when they started turning him into a cartoon character, which I didn't like. I much preferred him when he was, the madman.
Yeah.
And this is like god awful how the WWE portrayed black wrestlers. I mean, it's so that's when I laughed during February when it was like, hey, it's Black History Month. Let's salute pro wrestlers. And they show a clip of the Junkyard Dog crawling to the ring in a cage, going. But Kamala was so stupid in his character that he'd jump on them and then roll them over so they were on their stomach. So he would.
Oh, that's right.
He would pin them, but the ref would be like signaling to him, no, you got to turn him over. And then Kamala, a great actor, would get this really confused look on his face. And then he'd get frustrated and he'd get up and start headbutting the turnbuckle because he didn't know, I have to turn. And then usually his manager would like try and direct him. No, you got to flip him over, dude. And so great way to portray a black wrestler.
Right.
And how many matches did that go on? And he didn't remember to turn him over.
Oh, it was so funny. I mean, I think that was last match, to be honest with you.
So where did the love for 80s metal start? As you can tell, we're both of the generation. And
I love it.
We have the ongoing debate. We are because he's 10, 12, 15 years older than me, whatever it is. He's a Kiss guy. And I'm too young for Kiss was kind of, so I'm a Motley Crue guy. So we always have this ongoing battle. And I got to say, I know the answer because I never hear you mention Motley Crue and you always talk about Kiss. So,
oh no, I mean, I'm going to be honest with you.
Again.
I much prefer Rat to Motley Crue.
Okay.
But, in terms of, I'm a weird Kiss fan because I prefer them in the 80s, which most hardcore Kiss fans would be like, that's their worst era.
Right.
And when I'm talking 80s Kiss, I mean from Lick It Up to, let's say Hot in the Shade, which I think was 91. I love those Desmond Child power ballads. My favorite Kiss album, you're probably going to want to reach into my computer and ring my head. I love Crazy Nights, which most fans who like Ace and Peter would be like, that's the worst album ever. Because it was very unlike Kiss. It was keyboards, it was backing tracks. They were trying to be Bon Jovi, but
they were, yeah.
And
they
they
were
hired
adapting to the times
poorly.
But it's funny. I just had Kiss's. I guess on the records he was labeled the creative consultant, but I had a gentleman on my podcast called Danny Goldberg, who is legendary in the music business. He helped Led Zeppelin. Joan Jett, the Carrs. I mean, he's worked with everybody. and he was Kiss's, I guess you'd say, advisor from Lick It Up to probably Hot in the Shade. And I brought it up to him, like, Kiss did something I don't think I've ever seen any band do, which was from 79 to 90, really Carnival of Souls. Every album was a different genre of music. Like Dynasty was a disco album, basically.
Right.
Unmasked was a Cars album. If you listen to Unmasked, which I love, and you close your eyes and you don't tell people it's Kiss, you're like, oh man, Rick Ocasek sounds different here.
That I've never thought of that till now. That's great. Yeah, I can see it, or I can hear it.
Well, if you go back, and it's a really good album, but it's not Kiss. It's Kiss doing the Cars, and then they did The Elder, which is basically Gene and Paul saying, hey, we're gonna do our Pink Floyd.
We're gonna try and
album.
We want to be respected.
Yeah, and it's a great album. If you don't tell people it's Kiss, if you say give it to a young kid today and go listen to this album, I'm not going to tell you who it is. What do you think of it? I guarantee you they'll be like, this is pretty good. And then you say, oh, it's Kiss. Oh, this sucks.
Yep.
And then Creatures of the Night. That was kind of a rip off of what was coming or was already here. With Judas Priest and Iron Maiden, and then Vinnie Vincent got involved, and I love Vinnie Vincent. How big of an a-hole do you have to be when your name is Vinnie Vincent and you get kicked out of the Vinnie Vincent invasion?
That's got to be amazing,
right?
It's got to be,
And what I love about him is how he needled Gene and Paul. He got kicked out of Kiss 3 times in like 2 years.
Yeah.
But he was so good at what he brought to the table, they just kept bringing him back. But Lick It Up was kind of it was a change of what Ozzy was starting to do with Jakey Lee, and that guitar wizardry, and then Animalized was kind of the same vein with Mark St. John, and then with Asylum and Crazy Nights. Okay, we're gonna sound like Bon Jovi now, and then Hot in the Shade was it was a little harder for Kiss. I'm not saying it was a grunge album, but it was not the Desmond Child era. And then, Revenge was definitely, okay, we're going to be tougher. We're going to wear leather jackets and goatees. And then Carnival of Souls, I always say, is a great Stone Temple Pilots album.
Yeah.
I know in Motley Crue, that one album they did with Karabi, it was definitely a musical change for them.
Yeah.
But that's one album. And then they went back to what they knew.
Yep.
But Kiss, I don't think I've ever, and even Danny Goldberg was like, Earl, you're right. They were out of control.
Well, I really love hearing this, because I haven't thought that much into all the albums like you have, and it's enjoying hearing it.
Well, if you go back and I being a comic, I certainly have the time to do deep dives into Kiss records from 40 years ago. There's some really catchy songs on Unmasked.
Yes. I do like Unmasked. It's one of the ways that I'll go to. I'll throw it in, and I know people don't like it, but I enjoy it.
Well, it's Anton Fig on drums, so it's a different sound sonically than Peter Criss. And then with Dynasty's a fun album. If you like disco, and people laugh when I say this, but the Village People, who were on Kiss's record label, they were the biggest band in the world at that time. Great. The Village People at that time were bigger than the Rolling Stones, which is insane. But
they were. I remember that.
Well, they had that 2-year run, with the YMCA and Macho Man and In the Navy, and
they made a movie, and then
that killed them.
And then they killed
them. They did with Caitlyn Jenner, Can't Stop the Music.
Can't Stop the Music. Yeah.
Well, it's funny. I used to live down the street from where I live now, in Valerie Perrine, who was in Can't Stop the Music. Most people would know her as Miss Tessbacher from the Superman movies. This is why I love living in LA. You can only have this experience in LA. I'm walking my dog at 3 a.m. She's walking her dog, and I look at her, and she knew instantly. I knew who she was. I'm like, hey, that Village People movie, you got to have some good stories from that. And she just looked at me and said, honey, I don't want to talk about it. Because it was, that movie basically killed their career.
But there were stories that came out of that movie, like a lot of sex, drugs, and, well, not rock and roll, but disco.
Disco, yeah.
Well, it was 1980, it was, disco was kind of dying, and
right.
They didn't really adjust well to that.
But she was in, correct me if I'm wrong, I don't know if you know, but I mean, the comedian Lenny, wasn't she the girlfriend in Lenny?
Oh, yeah. She was a very accomplished actress.
Yeah. Till then.
So, yeah, that's makes me sad about the business is you take someone like her and here she's in Superman 2, Can't Stop the Music, was a complete bomb, but it was a big movie back then. I think the creator of Grease was in charge of the soundtrack or something.
Alan Carr. Yeah. Alan Carr was the producer.
Even bigger. He produced it. So you look at that 3 or 4 year run for her, it's like, wow, not many people can say they had that arc. And then, I know she still acts, but it was kind of a decline, I guess.
Right. Sure. Yeah.
Bruce Jenner at the time, that I think some probably Hollywood executives said, well, let's give him a shot. He's a good looking guy. We're putting him in with the Village People. Who cares if he can really act? He's got to be a better actor than them. And turns out he wasn't.
He really wasn't. No.
It's a brutal business, man. You get your one shot like he did, and the movie bombs. You never get another shot.
So if you're like me, every once in a while I'm like, hey, is it as bad as I remember it? Do I go back and watch it? And I have not since the 80s when it came out. We remember renting it, on VHS and seeing it because we were Grease fans and we liked Alan Carr and Saturday Night Fever, and he did all those. But when's the last time you saw that movie?
Probably a couple of years ago, and it's
really
pretty bad. It doesn't hold up. Not that that's a big breaking news story, but some things do. Like I was watching that. I'm a big Adam Baldwin fan, and he had a nice arc too. When he started with My Bodyguard, and My Bodyguard still holds up as a great teenage angst movie.
Love that movie.
And there was a kid, it's weird. Like I'm a fan of character actors, and there was a little kid in there who played like the funny sidekick to the
with the headpiece.
Character. No, that was John Cusack's sister.
I'm mixing up. He had the funny voice.
He had a bowl cut.
Yes.
And freckles, and he had just had so many funny lines when like the main character. And it's kind of Kiss related. His name was Chris Makepeace. He was the nerdy kid who was getting bullied. Mm-hmm. Well, a little semi-unknown fact about him was he was slated to star in the movie The Elder. If The Elder did a little better, Gene and Paul, and I'm sure Bill Aucoin, they had this master plan of making a movie about it, like Pink Floyd did. With The Wall, and that he was going to be the kid that was sung about in Just the Boy and the other songs.
I remember that now that you say that. I do remember hearing that.
The kid with the bowl cut, he only had about 10 lines in My Bodyguard, but like when Chris Makepeace sits down, he's like, hey, if you feel under the desk, you can get some fresh boogers. And it's just like that kid never acted again. Like it was his only movie.
Okay.
I've tried to get him on my podcast, but you talk about, I think Bin Laden was easier to find than
So speaking of the podcast, you also, other than the Comedy Store Wrestling podcast, you have your podcast, Inappropriate Earl. And how cool was it to have Stephen Piercy on? So you were a big fan of Rat.
It's like one of those things of, okay, this is why I got into comedy, so I can meet the singer from Rat.
Yeah.
Because they probably are my favorite band along with Kiss. I know, Rat's kind of controversial because, they started around the same time as Motley Crue, and Motley Crue, they got bigger with each album, and Rat, Rat's first album was so big.
Yep.
And then some people would argue they got worse with each album. or it just hit a kind of a plateau, and they didn't get worse, they didn't get better, depending on who you ask. So he was great. I had a few people warn me about him, like, hey, he's a little prickly, he's not the nicest guy. And oddly enough, we have like this Harold and Maude friendship now, where he texts me at random hours of the night and he talks to me in rat songs, like hey bro, I'd love to do your podcast again, I'll come back for more, and we'll lay it down. And it, like, I don't know if he's doing it on purpose or it's just working out that way, but it's pretty funny.
That's phenomenal.
I thought you were going to say that's way cool, Junior.
He said that. I said, hey, I'm in the main room at the Comedy Store tonight. Way cool, Junior. And, yeah, I mean, I've had some interesting guests. I started out having, I'm like, hey, I wonder if the bad guy from Superman 2 would come on. And most people would be like, oh, Terrence Stamp. He's a pretty big actor. I don't want Terrence Stamp on. I want the big guy who didn't talk.
That grunted. And
he came on. Like, I got a hold of him, it's a little bit of legwork because a guy of his age, he's in his 70s. I'm like, well, he's not on Instagram. He's probably not on Facebook. He might be on MySpace, but I found this bizarre Twitter account that was actually his.
Oh.
And his name's Jack O'Halloran.
Mm-hmm.
And he was like, hey, can we Skype? I'm like, no. This is before I would do Skype. I'm like, you got to come to me. He's like, well, where do you live? I'm like, West Hollywood. I'm like, where do you live? He's like, I think he said Hermosa Beach, which is somewhat of a far drive. So I finally talked him into coming, and it was one of my favorite. I think I'm at 350 episodes.
Yeah, that's awesome.
His was one of my top 5 because I didn't really know a lot about him other than Superman 2. But before he acted, he was a world-class heavyweight boxer.
Oh, wow.
Like, I think he fought George Foreman. He was scheduled to fight Muhammad Ali.
Wow.
Because he had a great, he really is he's a little shorter now, I guess, with age, but, in his boxing days and acting, he's probably 6'7".
Oh, wow.
He's a big dude.
Yeah, I remember him being big. Didn't realize it was that big. Wow. Yeah,
I mean, he's still, when he came to my house, he was my height. I'm 6'2"ish. And he was great. Like, I was starstruck because, like, if you're 50, most kids today probably wouldn't know who he was. But I was a little starstruck. So, I try and get weird guests. I think my strategy is I want to get people who no one's asking to be interviewed anymore, because, I'm pretty sure that I think this is 2018 when I interviewed him. The same thing with the bad guy from Roadhouse. I bet these Marshall Teague. It was so surreal. He came to my house. We watched Roadhouse together, which was like,
wow.
And I said to him, hey, you got to do your line right now. And I kind of surprised him. He's got that line at the end where he puts Swayze in a headlock and goes, I used to fuck guys like you in prison. And he did it. And then he goes home that night and he calls me and says, hey, I'm a reborn Christian. Can you take that line out?
Oh,
okay.
It was so nice. I did it.
Yeah, sure.
The guest is always right.
I'm appreciative that they came to my house. And,
yeah.
Right.
I had Roger Capps, the bass player from Pat Benatar's band, come, and he brings his guitar.
You okay over there? He's a big Pat Benatar fan.
I'm in love.
Well, he's the one who basically discovered her, at Catch a Rising Star, which was a big comedy club in the 80s. She was a waitress. He was in the band, who I guess would bring up comics or maybe play in between comics. So, I'm like, hey, man, because we had a very nice interview. And I don't know why he brought his guitar, but I was like, hey, why don't you start playing Shadows of the Night and I'll sing it. And, so it's like, I would do a lot of shit in the early days of Inappropriate Earl just for me. I'd be like, hey, and, my voice sounds nothing like Pat Benatar.
No. Well, that's awesome. 300 plus episodes. How long you started in 2014?
I mean, about then, and a lot of comics, a lot of roast battle losers. At the time, I thought that was a good idea. Even had Jeff on. Jeff is the
Really?
only guy. Jeff is the only guy I've ever seen sit on my couch and sweat because doing a podcast was so physically exhausting for him.
But back then, podcasts weren't a thing, were they?
I mean,
What made you do that?
well, I thought, okay, I got to start developing a fan base for stand up. So, I still do it. Hey, I'll be at the Comedy Store next week. If you want to come, let me know. And so I was really using it to get a little more of a national audience. Like, I want to start playing Canada, but no one really knows who I am up there.
Sure.
So, and this is right before I started, Roast Battle. So, now I have a relatively decent fan base in Canada. But I use it now, like I'm having Jasmine St. Clair on the podcast this week. And
Yeah, why wouldn't you?
oh, she's great. She's,
Yeah.
she's kind of like the porn version of me where she mentions names. She talks, she speaks her mind.
Yeah.
And, she's got, a lot of interesting, not just the porn stuff, but, she was in ECW and XPW. So she's got the wrestling stories. And she's actually really nice,
Yeah. And she's gorgeous.
I was with her all at the whole wrestling event Saturday night. And I think she's a little younger than me. I want to say 50 maybe.
Yeah.
And she looks great. I mean, she can still do porn. And it was just, she's introducing me to her porn friends, and, porn people have zero filter. And so she introduces me to this girl, probably her best female friend in life, Veronica Kane. And, she's beautiful.
Yeah.
Yeah.
She was a stockbroker girl gone porn, or look.
I'm not sure, to be honest with you. But she was like, "You don't know who I am, do you?" I'm like, I don't really watch porn, even though it looks like I produce it. I'm like, "Who are you?" She's like, "Well, I also wrestled, and I was in a raw sewage match with who was it? With Angel. Angel is one of my favorite wrestling characters ever. I'm going to say what his name was. He was in XPW, and he wrestled under the name Angel the Hardcore Homo. Which is what they call him. That's not what I'm calling him. Because he was actually a really good wrestler. Like, he was very technically proficient. He could do all these wacky stunts. His body was just you could do anything to him and he would not get hurt. So I looked up. Once again, I am not trying to direct people. I make no money off you YouTubing this. If you YouTube Veronica Kane Angel raw sewage match on YouTube, it's mind blowing. I can't even describe it. It's literally, they have these tubs of raw sewage around the ring.
Oh,
real sewage. It's not like chocolate sauce. And I won't spoil it, but the ending where Angel and the other male wrestler, they go up on this platform that's probably, oh boy, I'll guess anywhere from 100 to 200 feet off the ground. And there's like 6 tables on top of each other with a gigantic kiddie tub of raw sewage. It's the most amazing stunt I've ever seen in 40 years of watching pro wrestling.
Jesus.
Now I gotta see it.
Yeah, right. Must see.
I'm telling you, I'm not underselling it. The whole match is about 20 minutes, and it's pretty fantastic.
Whew. I don't know what to say.
Yeah, sewage. I'm just like, okay.
Well, once again, this is why I have not made it in stand-up completely. We've been doing this about for an hour? Have I plugged one thing where you can watch my comedy or see my cartoon or anything of that nature? My podcast. I mean, I brought up the podcast just to tell the Piercy stories, but I didn't even say what the name was. I'm directing you to a raw sewage match.
So let's talk about your animated show, The Jellies. How did that come to be?
Well, as much as I hate Roast Battle, I've got to give Roast Battle this. I was, and this was before Jeff got involved. There's a packed room. There's this young, skinny black kid sitting in the front row right by the Wave. And I thought this guy's a new member of the Wave or something. Because back in the early days of the show, the Wave was not very popular to do. I don't think you could find many black comics. Hey, we got this thing. It's called the Negro Wave. And that wasn't really the true name of it, if you know what I'm saying. You want to do it? And most of them like, fuck you. So it was a rotating cast every week. And so the skinny black dude's there. I'm hammering this guy with sickle cell jokes. And you look like Roger from What's Happening if he got AIDS and like just some wildly inappropriate stuff. And the show ends and I see this kid talking to Gerard Carmichael, who's a very big comic. And I'm like, oh man, if he's friends with Gerard, I better go apologize to him. So I walk up to him. It's probably about 15 black comics and their posse, I guess you'd say. And he looks at me and I'm like, hey man, sorry about that wacky stuff I said in there. And I totally blame Moses. I'm like, Moses tells me to say all that stuff. And he looks at me and goes, I can't say what he called me. You can guess. He's like, my. And I'm like, hey, can I call you that? And this gigantic bodyguard pokes his head around him and goes, no. And he's like, I want you to be the dad. Oh, no, he's like, I want you to be my dad. I'm like, well, who are you? He's like, oh, my name's Tyler, the creator. And I'm like, great, I'm Earl the comic. How are you? He's like, oh, I want you to be the dad of my cartoon. I'm like, oh, okay. And that's how I got it. Like, just
by ripping them apart.
Yeah, I think he liked. I mean, he's a very famous, well known. I don't know what the word is. Successful rapper. He's like basically the new P. Diddy. Like he's got cartoons, clothing lines. He's got a clothing store on Fairfax, which line out the door every day for his music. And I think he really enjoyed that I didn't know who he was.
Right. Yeah. I suppose he's so used to being recognized.
Or fond.
So used to being not only just recognized, but having his ass kissed by, oh, that's a great song, Tyler. You look great today, Tyler. Blah, blah, blah. And I think he looked at me and was like, this guy could give a fuck who I am. And that got me on. I think we did one season on his phone app. He had like a Netflix type subscription service. It was a pretty good deal, actually. It was like $5 a month, and you could get his music, his cartoons and shorts.
Okay.
The final 2 seasons on Adult Swim, and the show never got canceled. He's so successful that I just think he's a kid still.
Yeah.
28 or something. The show, it's on 3 networks right now still. Adult Swim, HBOMax, and the Cartoon Network.
Okay. But anything new is kind of in limbo right now?
It's been 2 years, but my friend pointed out to me that Bob's Burgers, they took like 2 or 3 years off.
Yeah, they did.
Just came back randomly. So I hope it's coming back, but I don't think it is. But if I got a call tomorrow, I'd be at that studio in 10 minutes. Because it's very fun. It's the complete opposite of my experience with Roast Battle. Tyler and his crew, you hear please, you hear thank you, you hear good job. And even when you don't give them what they want, I'm lucky that my voice is my voice. It's very deep.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
It's very dry and very monotone. So I'm not really asked to do a lot of variations on it. I can do a high-pitched voice, but I'm not going to get paid for it. So even the few times where I wasn't quite giving them what they needed, they'd be very cool. Hey, that's great, Earl. Can you just try it maybe a little deeper? And I'm like, you want it deeper? It really restored my faith. And okay, there's good people in the business.
Yeah.
Do you have say in the character development or anything like that?
I mean, I guess you'd say yes, because it was really just based on, I think, my stand-up. I'm sure they researched, okay, what is this guy stand-up about? And so the character of Barry Jelly is very much me. Like, if I were a father, this is how I would be with my son. And it was an honor to the guy who played my son is this actor by the name of Phil Lamar, who in the voiceover world is a legend. Like, any cartoon you've ever seen, any animated movie you've ever seen, he's been in it.
Yeah.
And it was literally like a hockey player getting to work with Connor McDavid, like, or Wayne Gretzky. Like, there was this one time, if you're, these voiceover studios, it's millions of dollars of equipment, and the mics are, my God, they're probably, I've been known to exaggerate, but I don't think I am. They're probably anywhere from $10,000 to $20,000 microphones. So
Jesus, sure.
If your nose hair moves, it picks it up. And I was having trouble one day saying, I think I had to say pussy, but my P was popping, because if you say P, any word that starts with P, you kind of pucker your lips and you make a popping sound, like, and I got scared, and like, I was nervous, and like, I'm sitting there with Phil Lamar, who is like the De Niro of voice actors, is probably a better analogy. And he just looks at me, and I think he sensed I was nervous, and he hands me this pencil. And in my brain, I'm thinking, what the fuck is this for? And he's like, say the word, and when you say it, kind of talk into the eraser end of the pencil. And I'm thinking, how the fuck is that gonna help? And he's like, put the pencil in between the mic and your mouth. And sure enough, the first take I said pussy, and I didn't make the popping sound, because it's something about the acoustics of the eraser tip covers up the popping sound of the
Sure.
So it's just like little shit like that was like, has helped me in every audition I've ever had after that, and certainly every episode of the Jellies. It was like I was in voiceover college with him. The funniest part of the Jellies is the first season, which was on his phone app. I didn't get to see the other actors, so they didn't know what I looked like. I didn't know what they looked like. I didn't know if they were white or black. And so in seasons 2 and 3, because there's a little bit more money or whatever, someone from Adult Swim, and I think Tyler, thought, well, let's have the actors in the room together if they have a scene. So I walk in one day, and my wife, AJ Johnson, and Phil are in there, and they look at me, and I think they thought I worked there. And they were like, who are you? I'm like, I'm Barry Jelly. Who are you guys? And they're like, well, I'm Debbie Jelly. I'm Cornell Jelly. And AJ looked at me and goes, you're white. I'm like, you're black. So they had no idea I was white.
Good acting there.
I mean, my voice is so deep, especially on a millions of dollar sound system, that season 1 we did at some rich guy's house in the hills. It was at this mansion, and I'll assume he was either, I don't know, it was either Tom Petty's house or someone's house, because in the recording area there was probably hundreds of thousands of dollars of guitars,
Jesus,
a drum kit that probably cost $100,000 in and of itself, saxophones. I mean, it was unbelievable. And the recording room, probably I would guess at least $500,000 worth of gear, mixing board and Pro Tools, and so I don't know. I still to this day don't know whose house it was, but
it sounds like every recording studio here.
Yeah, absolutely.
Hey, I love it. Well, you see my recording studio, that's my kitchen right there. So that's my goal in 2022, is to have a little bit more of a setup like you guys do, like a little podcast sign, and so people don't see the background of my kitchen.
Good goal. Good goal. Now, aren't you working on another animated series? Funny as hell.
Is
that yours?
Not. It hasn't been picked up yet. It's unfortunately, to pitch a TV show, especially an animated show, during a pandemic is like, you might as well be the white guy in the 100-yard dash at the Olympics. You're gonna. I mean, you ever see that one dude in the Olympics? It's like the one white dude from like Poland, and you've got all those runners from like Kenya, and
still got to be out there.
He's like the one horse in the Kentucky Derby that literally finishes dead last by like 100 lengths, and you're like, well, he must have beaten someone to get in this race.
He's Poland's fastest man.
Yeah, I'm like, he's the fastest they have.
So, it's still in play, I guess you'd say. It's a really funny idea based around that, an animated comedy club where you'd have different comics come in every, I don't know if it would be a weekly show or a monthly show, or maybe just a series. And where
are you involved in the development of it?
I am. Me and another person.
Say what you can. That's fine.
We developed it, and that's one of the great things about working at the Comedy Store, which is the #1 club in the world, really. Is the access to comics is pretty easy to, and if you go up to any comic at any club and go, hey, you want to be in my animated thing, it's on Netflix or whatever network it ends up eventually being on, it's pretty easy to get them to say yes.
Sure.
Awesome.
Well, a very easy gig. You just, you probably in our minds, it's a half-hour show, so you take out 6 minutes for commercials, so you literally just record a 6-minute set into a microphone, and that's it.
Yeah.
We would obviously pay, like I paid for the what you saw, that sizzle reel. We paid an animator to make an animated version of me and Eleanor Kerrigan. I mean, the good thing, the bad thing is there's so many networks on TV. Like I have DirecTV, which is like saying you have AOL.
Wait, which you do, because that was your email address.
Oh, 100%.
Because I was like, wait, this guy's got an AOL. No wonder you didn't get the first one.
When I run into people I haven't seen in 10, 15, 20 years, and they say, what's your phone number? It's the same one you have. What's your email? Skakel at AOL. But there's so many, like DirecTV, it literally has 800 channels.
Yeah.
And then you go to streaming services. There's
it's out there.
The big ones, Netflix, Hulu, Amazon, and then you've got these weirder ones, Furvy and Peacock now.
Yeah.
So the good thing is with all these networks, they need content. So it's in some ways relatively easy to sell a show. But the last 2 years, there's no way you're going to be able to pitch an animated show where you need 5 or 6 people in a room together, using mics that, obviously you're basically, you're spitting on mics.
Right. Yeah.
But now it's slowly getting back to normal. So it's been put on hold to answer your question from 10 minutes ago.
Well, I'm excited if it does come out. I definitely will watch for it.
No, go ahead.
I just, in the world of everything I do is for my stand-up. So the only reason I want that show on the air is because, now I can play a theater where you guys are from, or, I can go to Canada and like most people do stand-up to get into films or acting. I'm the complete opposite. I'm into acting for better stand-up gigs. So
sure.
It's, I've always done things ass backwards.
Yeah, another. I was just going to mention another project that you worked on that I think was very underrated and unfortunately didn't make it much longer. The I'm Dying Up Here, that was on Showtime, which based around the '70s comedy scene, and
Yeah, I mean that was the little show that didn't.
Yeah.
Yeah, that was too bad because it was funny.
I mean, when you look at the cast,
Right.
I mean, Melissa Leo, she's won an Oscar. Brad Garrett, season 2, he should have won an Emmy for his role. And then all the comics who were on it, just this amazing, Andrew Santino, Eric Griffin, Al Madrigal, who's an amazing comic, and the guest spots they would have. Rick Overton, who is he's almost along the lines of a Brody Stevens, where he's more of an LA comedy legend, but he's been in so many great films, just like The Wacky Country Bumpkin. Who else was in it? I mean, Robert Forster, who
Sure.
I mean, I saw him at the premiere party for season 1 at Cantor's Deli, and which is that famous deli on Fairfax. And he was behind me in line. I just turned around and said, "Hey, I loved you in that Chuck Norris movie, Delta Force," where he played like the Arab bad guy. So, it's one of those, and I'm not just saying this because I was on the show, and I was barely on it, but I was on it enough to say I'm in it. When you're behind the boom guy in the credits, you're not really a massive part of the show, but I think it was too real. Because the number one complaint I got from my friends is it's not that funny. And
Really?
Well, it's
behind the scenes. Yeah.
It's not a sitcom.
Yeah.
I mean, not to take this to a different level, but I've done comedy, I'll say 22 years. I would guess I've lost probably 25 comedy friends to suicide.
Jesus.
Literally one a year. And like I count, like Ralphie May basically was suicide by food.
Yeah, right.
I'm not even trying to be funny.
Right.
So it's like stand-up is a brutal business, man. Like and it take the brutality of it takes many forms. There's I saw it, with Roast Battle, like from the standpoint of I saw a lot of younger comics, they got on the TV show thinking, oh my God, I'm going to be famous. And it's like, no, this is literally giving you the famous phrase, your 15 minutes. And, you're not even getting that on this show. You're getting 5.
Right.
And, and not that anyone killed themselves from doing that show, but it was just like the reality check that, 3 years later, they're back to doing open mics. But I was on TV, but nobody remembers the show.
Yeah. Right.
It's too bad. Yeah.
So it's like stuff like that. And then you get into, you're basically performing in a nightclub and there's drugs and alcohol and, womanizing and,
the skit's lonely. Some nights.
Yeah, you get lonely. You get, you start dating comics, which I've certainly done. And then you break up and then you see them fucking someone else the next week. That's kind of a mind fuck, and it's the rejection you get, people think I'm a successful voiceover actor, and I guess I am, but I literally still to this day get rejected for 90% of the auditions I go on.
Wow. Okay. It's brutal. It's brutal.
Well, it's even tougher in my case, because not only do you still get rejected for stand-up gigs, but now I'm getting also rejected for voiceover gigs. So it's like a second segment of because in the voiceover work is 100 times harder than stand-up. And I never thought I would say that, but
no, I'm surprised by that, but go ahead. Yeah.
Well, especially for me, because I'm in a very, I'll say niche or niche, depending on, it's like my favorite hockey player is Matt Roy, but some people say it's Wah.
Yeah, Matt Wah. Yeah.
But I'm in a very small category of, it's called baritone, but basically booming, deep baritone voices. So it's me. It's literally James Earl Jones.
Darth Vader, yeah.
So I'm auditioning against Darth Vader. And he doesn't even audition. He's just offered the role.
Right. Yeah. No, he doesn't audition anymore. That's right. Yeah.
And he shouldn't audition. Even I'm like, he should get this role.
If he's available, book him.
Yeah. Basically, if he's not tired, because I think he's in his 80s. And so then if he passes on the gig, I'm then going up against actors like Rob Riggle, Dylan McDermott, Patrick Warburton. So I've got to hope they're too busy to do the gigs. And then the third group is which I'm in is just working voiceover guys. Did you guys ever watch Sons of Anarchy?
Oh yeah.
Mm-hmm. If you remember the bad guy in season 5 and a little bit of season 6, the black guy, was like a really hulking black dude. His name's Billy Brown.
Okay.
Yeah.
I'm going up against him. He's the current voice of what is it? The Navy, the Few, the Proud. No, is it the Marines?
The Marines.
Oh, okay.
He's the voice in that commercial.
Okay.
So, I'm going up against like the 10 deep voice actors who we all work. Like none of us are not working. So, it's, because in stand-up, like let's just say this weekend, if you're a funny stand-up, you will get work this weekend. There's probably, anywhere from 5 to 10 A rooms in every state.
Sure.
Maybe not 10 in Alaska. There's probably one there, but there's probably 15 in California. So that's 50 states, let's say 250 A rooms in the country, plus college gigs, corporate gigs. There's 500 gigs this weekend. So if you're not getting those gigs, you're not funny. But in the voiceover world, this week, there's maybe 5 auditions for deep voice guys. There's the new Superman movie, the villain part. There's the new Adult Swim, cartoon for it's about Dungeons and Dragons, and they need a deep voice for the main dragon bad guy. So that's maybe 5 gigs for probably 50, from James Earl Jones to Billy Brown to me to Rob Riggle, maybe 20 guys who have a legitimate shot at those 5 gigs. So it's much harder to get them.
So do you look for those, or do they just?
No, I have an agent.
So he's looking for them.
Yeah, I mean, I'm probably the number one voiceover agency in town or the world. I don't want to be too dramatic and say the world, but so I definitely have a little bit of a, when someone says, "Hey, we got Earl Skakel from, the so-and-so agency," it definitely helps me
Gotcha.
get in the door. But it's still, I'm sure Billy Brown's with probably, I don't know, William Morris or something. And so it's very incredibly competitive in the voiceover field. But if you do get like the Jellies, I still get, we haven't done an episode in 2 years. I still get nice checks twice a month still. So I can only imagine, what the guys on Bob's Burgers or South Park or Family Guy, that's the goal.
Right. One of those, yeah.
So, because Tyler's so busy and so creative and successful that, selfishly, I was like, oh man, this could be the Black South Park.
Yeah.
Because Tyler's, his sense of humor is very much like Trey Parker and Matt Stone, but for African Americans. And the fact that I'm basically the only white guy on the show, makes me wish we were doing more seasons.
Yeah, for sure.
Well, you never know. Like you said, a lot of those shows did take breaks. So
yeah, Tyler's the type of kid, even, I'm not going to lie and say we're best friends, but you got, worked with him for 5 years. He's the type that would wake up tomorrow and say, fuck it, let's do another season.
Right.
Sure.
Well, let's hope so. Yeah.
I hope, because in the stand-up world, his fan base is exactly what I want. That 18 to say 30-year-olds who, I don't have any merch to sell, but like, if I had Inappropriate Earl t-shirt, they would buy it. They'd buy a comedy album. They'd watch, if I, through the grace of God, got on Netflix on a special, they'd watch it.
You didn't start producing Skakel Army shirts after that guy?
Yeah, heck yeah.
You know, I thought, this is tailor made for Gene Simmons.
I was gonna say Gene would sue you. You'd be fucked.
Oh, 100%. I got a little bit of money, but I don't have that kind of money to take on Gene Simmons.
Nobody does.
No.
Although I did meet him once at a party in Malibu, and I kind of gained respect for him. So we're talking. I think he'd recognize me from stand-up or something. His son's a fan of mine, Nick.
Okay.
Oh, okay.
So he's talking to me, and he's got this girl behind him, but I'm so enamored that, oh my God, Gene Simmons is in front of me. I mean, and I'm starting to think of 1,000 questions I could ask about him. And I noticed his right hand it's by his waist, but it's going like this. And I thought, oh my God, maybe he has Parkinson's or something. And then for whatever reason, I start to slowly put 2 and 2 together. And I on the sly, I kind of just look down there, and he's fingering the girl behind him. And then reaches into his pocket and tries to hand me a Kiss credit card to sell me. Like, this guy
within one swoop.
Oh, it was the most smooth thing I've ever seen in my life. He's talking to me, fingering a girl, and then goes into business mode.
Wow.
Like, it was pretty epic.
That's fantastic.
Yeah. I mean, yeah.
Good old Gene.
Good. Not many people can get away with that.
Well, I love him. A lot of people don't, but I think the older I've gotten, and specifically in comedy, the more honest I've gotten, which I love. Not that I was a bullshitter before, but like, there'd be a time in my life where if I wasn't happy with how I was treated, like say on Roast Battle and by Jeff and the network, I would just write it off as, this is how the business is. But now I don't. I've kind of subscribed to that Gene Simmons. Hey, I like money. I like pussy. You don't like that? Then don't listen to my music, which is someone else playing bass, but I'm going to get checks.
He definitely is honest. He's definitely upfront on everything he does.
Never.
I mean, I like that. I mean, he gets,
yeah.
He almost gets mocked for his honesty because, a lot of people, I mean, he's a very talented musician, but like he didn't apply himself really. I want to make money selling lunchboxes.
he knew he couldn't. I've actually read all his books. Just because I thought he was interesting.
If you go back to the early Kiss albums and listen to the bass lines where it was actually him playing, he's pretty good.
Yeah.
I'm not saying he's John Entwistle or, but
nobody is.
No, I mean,
John's the greatest of all time, but that's a different subject.
Well, it's funny. I can't mention this person's name because they're a privacy freak, but I have to say this in a way where I disguise who this was, but it was a very, very famous bass player. And they were at the Comedy Store one night, and I was like, I wonder what they think of Gene's bass playing abilities. So I pull up this video of Gene doing a bass solo where he's just spitting blood, and this person looks at me and goes, "That's not a bass solo. That's Gene hitting the same chord over and over, spitting blood."
Yeah.
But
which is true. I mean, his bass solo is not for his musical talents, like you were saying. I mean, he doesn't apply himself for that, right? He'd rather have the theatricals than.
Which is funny. Which is why I like Kiss in the 80s, which is an oxymoron, because I think in the 80s they were never more musically talented than at that time. In terms of their individual skills, like, Vinnie Vincent's a maniac, but back then he could hold his own with Jakey Lee or, DeMartini
he could.
I think Jeff Beck said that at that time, Vinny was one of his favorite guitar players. So that's
Wow.
pretty lofty praise. And certainly Eric Carr was an incredible power drummer. I don't think Kiss would have survived with Peter and Ace in it at that time frame.
They wouldn't have. No, not especially with Peter.
Yeah, I mean, he just, and really even the one album Mark St. John played on, which I love, Animalize. There's no way Ace could have played that stuff. I mean, which it's always bummed me out about Gene and Paul, how they shit on Mark St. John. And I realized he was a very small part of history because he was only there for literally 9 months. But you wanted a Jake E. Lee clone. You wanted someone who could play like Yngwie Malmsteen. You got it.
Mhm.
So, but that was an interesting time for Kiss when they were like sellout city. If polka was popular, they would have put out a polka album.
Good thing they weren't from Wisconsin.
It would have sold.
Oh,
I would have bought it.
well, yeah, we're in
I would have
Wisconsin.
too. I mean,
Right?
Kiss is out of control. They're the only band I've ever seen play on their own tribute record. Like, what? Hey, we're great.
We're gonna tribute ours. That's a good point.
Oh, that's fantastic. Oh, man.
Well, maybe someday you can have one of the Kiss members on your podcast.
I've tried. I did a comedy show. It's a very long story, but I'll trim some of the fat. One night, an ex-girlfriend calls me up, and she says, "Hey, can you fill in for me for a gig?" I'm like, yeah. What's the gig? And she was being very secretive about it. And she's a very talented actress named Whitney Rice. And she's like, "Well, you just go to this warehouse downtown, and this big black guy will meet you outside, and it's an open mic. I can't do it. I've got something else to do." I'm like, this does not sound like an open mic. I don't know many open mics that have a giant black dude. And so I go to the address she gave me. Sure enough, there's an incredibly large black gentleman at the door. He's like, "Are you Earl?" I'm like, "I am today, brother." And he takes me into what is now LA Live, which is the venue across the street. I can't call it Crypto.com Arena. Staples Center.
Stable, yeah.
Yeah.
I think it's the Clive Davis Amphitheater. And I'm like, this is weird. This is not an open mic. And they would not let me inside. But I heard what seemed to be thousands of people on the other side of that door. And I could tell it was live. I could tell they weren't watching a movie or something. And all of a sudden, I think it was Bill Burr. Someone says, "Good night, guys. I'm Bill Burr." And then the security guy opens the door and goes, "You're next." So I start running down the hallway, which was curtained off. So the crowd was on the other side of this curtain. I'm running down the hallway like the Ultimate Warrior going to the ring. I get to the end of the curtain. I look up, and there's Gene Simmons on stage, sitting by himself with a chair next to him. And my friend Skylar Stone, who was on Punk'd, and I think another one of those type shows, hands me a microphone and goes, "Interview him." And I didn't even see. I was so focused on Gene Simmons that my peripheral vision wasn't catching what was on the right side of the room, which wasn't thousands, but it was hundreds of people. And Gene's family's in the front row. And so I sat down for 10 minutes and interviewed him.
Wow.
And because my first question was about Vinnie Vincent, and he loved that.
Okay.
And he, like an idiot, he invites me to dinner afterwards. And I'm like, "Hey, I got to go do roast battle, but thank you." So I've tried to get him on the podcast a few times after that. It's just very hard to nail him down. And I know some friends who could link me with Paul, but I'm kind of scared because I don't think Paul would like my sense of humor. Like, I can just tell.
Yeah.
I don't know. I don't know.
I mean,
Maybe.
I don't know. I think he's more like Gene's a buffoon. He knows.
Yes.
I'm a buffoon. So I think we would get along. Like he loved the Vinnie Vincent question.
Yeah.
Like, which was basically the joke I did to you guys. I'm like, hey, is Vinnie really that out of control? I mean, he got kicked out of the Vinnie Vincent invasion, and Gene just starts belly laughing. I'm like, hey, have you seen Mark St. John lately? Just kidding. And and Gene's laughing. And I think if I said that, because I read an interview once, or I listened to an interview once with Paul, and someone brought up Vinnie. And Paul was like, I don't want to talk about him.
I think that's what Paul would be. He just would say, I don't want to talk about it.
You know, it's like when I had Bobby Brown on my podcast, not the singer, but the Cherry Pie Girl. And she was awesome. I mean, she came to my home, you know.
Nice.
But,
she's hanging on my wall right around the corner. I have the album. I have the album up on my wall.
Oh, she's very, very nice. But, you know, and I get it. Like, you know, she didn't want to talk about the Cherry Pie video that much. And Star Search, you know, she won I think the spokesmodel thing like 9 times.
Oh,
She
sure.
didn't want to talk about that. And, you know, she had a book to promote. So I read the book. Believe me, you could drive a truck through the sentences. And she brought her boyfriend with her at the same time. So, you know, she had some good stories in the book about, you know, fucking different celebrities. And like, I couldn't ask her, hey, how big was Dave Navarro's dick? And, you know, the boyfriend's right there. So I think if I were to get Paul on the Inappropriate Earl couch, I mean, I don't know. I mean, I'm pretty good at massaging my way into the questions, but I just have a sneaking gut that it might be a quick interview.
Yeah.
And I also think Paul would say, you come to me. So yeah, I think you're out.
Yeah, he'd probably be like,
You know what I mean?
Like, I think Gene would come to me.
Yeah.
Because in Gene's mind, it'd be like, okay, I mean, I'm not a famous comic, but this guy's a well-known comic or whatever I am. There's value in me selling some bullshit on his podcast.
Right.
Right.
And
What you got to do is get Vinnie Vincent.
well, it's funny enough. I probably shouldn't say this idea because someone will probably steal it, but I was one of the idiots that bought the Vinnie Vincent box set.
Okay.
Oh.
Which was on cassette, which should have been the first red flag. So I get, and it was very well done. It was a pink Flying V, you know, a miniature guitar case, basically. Comes in the mail. So I'm holding up my iPad here. Just, it was a little bigger than this. I remember picking it up in the mail, and I was like, man, this feels kind of light. And I'm going like this. I hear nothing in the box, not even the paper they used to buffer it. Like, and so I open up, there's nothing in there.
Oh.
So I approached Russell Peters with, you know, Russell's he's in that Jimmy Carr category of very famous comics. I said, dude, I got a great idea for a documentary. This is after the Anvil documentary.
Yeah.
You know, okay, if they did a documentary on Anvil, this Vinnie Vincent thing's a shoo-in. Where the opening scene is me on my couch with the box set I still have somewhere. And I just open it up to nothing. I close it. The next scene is me knocking on Vinny's door. And I think he lives in Tennessee with the box set going, where are my cassettes, motherfucker? and do a serious interview because we've never really heard his side of the story.
Right.
You know, we've heard the pretty one-sided view of just Gene and Paul burying him, saying he was a maniac. And I mean, listen, when you're kicked out of your own band and kissed 3 times, probably some of it's on you.
I was gonna say, we know Mark Slaughter doesn't like him very much either. So,
and Mark is so nice. He saw me at Zany's in Nashville, and it's the funniest thing. I was doing some rock and pod convention. I'm drawing a blank on the name of it. I wish I could remember because the Rock and Pod convention, I think it's called. And some great guys. These brothers run it, and you walk into this convention center, and it's hundreds of podcasters. So you hop on every podcast, and they did a music show, and guys like Keel were there, and you know, some random members of random 80s bands.
yeah.
And it ended with a comedy show at Zany's in Nashville. So my thing is wearing leather pants and all that stuff. I got my leather pants on and an original Vinnie Vincent Invasion t-shirt. Like literally this thing goes for probably $1,000 on eBay because it's the OG. And I walk out and there's Mark Slaughter in the front row. And he's giving me the "we're not worthy" thing. I got so starstruck. I went right to that Vinnie Vincent getting kicked out of his band joke. And, so he's so fucking nice. Like,
Yeah.
if he has a problem with you, once again, it's probably on you.
A little bit. Yeah.
But I still think it would be a fascinating documentary, and especially now, there's rumors that he's transitioning. I don't care if he is or isn't. Like,
Right.
I live in West Hollywood. I'm the only straight guy in my building. I could care less what people are.
Yeah.
So, I just think it would be such a fascinating. He is a musical, like savant. Just his music career is fascinating. Starting out in the Dan Hartman band, Dan Hartman was the guy probably most famous for singing that song "I Can Dream About You."
I could dream. Yeah. Okay. Yeah.
And he one of those.
Which wasn't even his face in the video.
Well, that's a weird video because it's the 5 black actors, some of them famous, Robert Townsend, Stoney Jackson, and Michael T. Williamson, who's probably the most famous of those 5 guys who were in that video. They're lip syncing to a song Dan Hartman wrote, but I think a guy named I'm probably getting this wrong. Another singer was singing.
So that I did not know. I thought it was Dan singing.
Dan Hartman. No, it's a Dan Hartman song being lip synced by 5 black guys, but it's like a studio guy singing.
Perfect.
So he starts out in that band with G.E. Smith from Hall & Oates and the Saturday Night Live band.
Mm-hmm.
Goes to that. Starts writing jingles for Happy Days. I think Joni and Chachi.
Wow.
Gets a Kiss. Does his stint in Kiss and the 2 Vinnie Vincent albums, and they got on some big tours. Alice Cooper, Iron Maiden, and then he literally went he just disappeared.
So I thought I read somewhere that at one time he enclosed himself in his fortress in Tennessee. I think it was when the whole 2000, the world's going to shut down, that he took that literally and buried himself in this house. I don't know. I don't know. I don't know if that was true or not.
Well, I think he got arrested. Or no, he didn't get arrested, but he had dead dogs in Tupperware containers or something.
Yes.
He loved his dogs, but he didn't want. I don't know the exact reason, but
crazy stuff like that.
And then his first wife was sadly murdered. She was a prostitute, and she got murdered in the woods in Connecticut. And he's I don't mean to bring the podcast down to a sad note, but he's such a fascinating story.
He's been through a lot. Yeah.
Just his time in Kiss would be okay. That's a cool story. But when you add that stuff in, and then probably one of my favorite things he's done, even though he ripped me off for $150 or whatever it was, put out an album, Guitarmageddon, late 90s, I think. And so I get the album, and it's just him doodling, the first song. So I thought, let's see what's the second song. So I press forward, and it goes to the end of the album. He made it. It's a bunch of songs, but there's no break. There's no song 2, song 3. He makes you listen. You either have to listen to the whole thing or none of it.
Is he brilliant or crazy?
That sounds like a Gene Simmons move there. He stole that from Gene.
It's oddly genius.
It is.
So those people that borderline when they're a genius or crazy.
Yeah. Right.
With your IQ.
I don't know if he's autistic or,
you'll find out in your documentary.
Well, I mean, it's. I still believe that it could be.
I do too.
I mean, it's like it goes back to the cartoon comedy club idea. These networks need streaming, need content.
Yep.
And I think, you could sprinkle in interviews with like Mark Slaughter. I had Bobby Rock on Inappropriate Earl, and he was probably the best interview I've ever done, not because of me, but because of him. He has been sober for so long that his memory he's almost like Rain Man. He broke down how they recorded the first Invasion album, and I felt like I was in the studio with them. I mean, just such details. And so, I think he'd be a good interview. Certainly Dana Strum. Gene and Paul are so weird when it comes to Vinny that, but obviously they would be amazing gets if they wanted to, be involved. I think, you need some names, and then,
But I think with Gene and Paul, yes, they don't like to talk about it, but I think there was a little bit of, I'm sure Vinny is crazy, but they don't really want people that much better than them.
Well, I think
they want to be the focal. They want to be the stars.
And I guess, I understand why. I mean, it's their band.
Yeah.
They certainly carried the torch when Ace and Peter were too messed up to play. And I think even getting back to Mark St. John, I think he only played 1.5 concerts with them. And I don't know if this is an urban legend or whatever, but some people don't believe the story that he had to quit the band because he had that crazy arthritis.
Right.
Because a year after Kiss, he was in his own band. But they said Paul, in the full concert that he played, which I think is in Binghamton, New York, Paul looked over and Mark St. John's doing the Jakey Lee, throwing the guitar around his shoulder, and right back into playing and playing with his teeth, and putting it. I've seen Steve Stevens do this when I see Billy Idol. He puts the guitar behind his neck, and I think someone, and this could be a rumor or whatever, but someone said Paul was like, "What the fuck is that?" I mean, I could definitely see Gene and Paul being like, "Hey, man,
your part is background until you get the solo, and then you move, then you go back to the background."
Which I think is what made Bruce Kulick such a great player, because he was, and this is going to sound like I'm insulting Bruce, who I kind of know, but he was a great yes man. Like, yes, Gene, you want me over there for Deuce? Okay, Paul, you want, like you said, I'll be on the riser next to Eric. I'll do the solo. I'll go back. These are the 20 songs you're playing. Learn them. And Bruce is such an amazing guitar player. He probably took him, 2 hours to know the whole Kiss catalog.
The whole thing, right?
So
we saw, well, I mean, I saw him in Kiss during the, back, I've seen Kiss so many times, but we saw him in went over
with the Guess Who or
no Grand Funk Railroad.
Grand Funk Railroad, yeah.
We went to see them as a fluke. Then we're sitting there. I'm like, I recognize him.
Well, I went to every one of his. He had a band after Kiss called Union.
Yeah,
which was an amazing band with John Corabi from the Crew as a singer. My good friend Brent Fitz on drums, who now drums for Slash.
Oh, nice.
And maybe the most talented bass player I've ever seen, a guy by the name of Jamie Hunting, who I think filled in for not the Who, but he played bass for Roger Daltrey when he would do his solo things. And Jamie was like a true rock star, like a Keith Richards on bass. So Bruce is very regimented, I guess you'd say. Like he probably picked that up from Gene and Paul. Like, okay, we're going to do these 10 songs. We're going to do Surrender after the drum solo. It's going to start 8 seconds after this. And Jamie is like a wild card. He's brilliant, but probably hard to work with because he, at that time might have been under the influence of things. and those early Union shows were so fun to watch because there was just the most interesting dynamic of, post crew for Karabi. This was my friend Brent's probably first big band he was in. At that time he was a struggling musician working at a guitar store on Sunset. So he was like the hunger part of the band. Like, he would always push them. Hey, let's do a cover of, this song or that song. Hey, let's do an extended solo here and there. And then, Bruce was obviously the name with Karabi, and Jamie was probably, I don't want to say he's as talented as Bruce, but he's up there in terms of the bass playing. So it was just the wrong time for the band. I mean, I think they put out 3 albums, and I think it was 98.
Yeah.
Just the wrong time for 80s guys to get in with I think at the time still boy bands were big, and
and they're trying to get off their name, but they weren't big enough. I remember all those members from Kiss. I tried to follow them afterwards and just fell off there's too many.
I mean, Vinny was probably the most successful in terms of, when he did something, you knew about it.
Right.
Problem is, it was usually ripping off fans. So wasn't really, the greatest thing in the world. And then, Bruce was, Bruce is just like, he's almost, I don't want to say he's quite as proficient as Steve Lukather, but like, Bruce has played on a lot of albums that you probably never heard. Like, he's so technically good that, like I read Steve Lukather's book and I had no idea he's played on thousands of albums, literally thousands.
Wow.
I didn't know he did the guitar solo for She's a Beauty on the Tubes.
Okay.
Probably took him 10 minutes and then he left, and I'm sure, so that's Bruce. Like,
wow.
But
probably got called when they needed something, to your point, something very good, very technical. Call Bruce and he'll come in and do it.
Oh, and on Grand Funk, I saw him at a state fair, and it's weird. Grand Funk, you don't realize how many hits they had.
I was just thinking that we had a great time.
We did. Yeah, it was fun.
At least I didn't. Outside of we're an American band, that's about my knowledge of Grand Funk.
100%.
They said, "Oh, I didn't know that." It's like when I saw Kool and the Gang open for Van Halen, which I still think is the oddest concert pairing I've ever seen.
Could be.
Apparently, the story is David Lee Roth was a huge fan of Kool and the Gang. The others, not that they weren't, but they wanted. I could see the Van Halen brothers going, "Hey, we need like a new metal band, or we need a draw." And because David fought them enough where they were like, "Hey, if you want them on the tour, you're going to pay for them." So I saw Kool and the Gang open up for Van Halen at the Staples Center, and very similar to Grand Funk. Like, I knew they sang Celebration, but then they start Get Down on It. Oh, I didn't know they sang that song. I thought that was Earth, Wind and Fire. And like probably 7 or 8. It was like watching the greatest hits album live, just hit after hit. And still to this day, I don't think I've ever seen an opening act go over better than Kool and the Gang did. This was a very white crowd. It's Van Halen.
Yeah.
And probably about 3/4 of the way into their set, the whole crowd's dancing. So it's kind of neat to see. So
but especially for openers,
Bruce could play in Kool and the Gang tomorrow night if they had a gig.
I'm amazed by your knowledge and able to remember names and things of every genre. That's awesome. That's been a lot of fun listening to all that. Just your history. Wow.
Well, I think a lot of it is because I've never had a drink or drug in my life. So I've lived in LA for 53 years. I've seen it all twice. I haven't done most of it, but I've seen it all twice. So I can remember everything. Like, like here's a kind of an interesting Kiss story. My friend Brent was drumming for Vince Neil. And he was playing at the Key Club, which used to be Gazzari's in the 80s. And so we go see Brent play for Vince Neil, and we go backstage. Now, backstage at the Key Club at the time was like the kitchen. It was not like this beautiful, veloured walled, multi couches and caviar green room. And small talk. Bruce says to me, "Hey, Earl, let's leave. Let's start leaving with Bruce." And I'm such an idiot savant with music. I see this guy who kind of looks like a miniature Joe Perry. And I'm like, oh shit, that's Frankie from Stephen Pearcy's post-rap band Arcade. So I said, "Bruce, I'll catch up with you later. I want to talk to Frankie about Arcade and Pearcy." About 2 minutes later, we hear gunshots. And we all go up outside. And Bruce, that's the night Bruce got shot.
Oh, wow.
And, this is really before Papa. This is whenever he got shot. I don't know what year that was. Maybe late 90s, early 2000s. So there wasn't really cell phones and shit like that. So the crowd gathers around Bruce. I'm with Brent, my girlfriend at the time, who manages to this day Motorhead.
Nice.
And Bruce is bleeding, pretty bad. I think he got shot directly in the knee, and maybe a second bullet grazed his head, I want to say, or grazed some part of his body. And I had this really nice, I'm not trying to impress you guys, but probably an $800 Versace dress shirt on. And everyone looks up at me and goes, "Earl, give him your shirt, as a tourniquet." And I looked at him, I'm like, "Hey, Bruce, level with me. How bad is it?" So I gave him my shirt because I was getting intense pressure from my girlfriend and Brent. Like, "Dude, come on, man." And I'm such a Jew that Bruce goes to Cedars-Sinai. Obviously, he's a gunshot victim, so they rip his leather pants off. They cut it. And I start panicking, going, "They better not touch my fucking shirt." So I go back the next day, and I'm like, "Hey, what do they do with like the clothes of gunshot victims?" And this like nurse or orderly or whatever, he's like, "Oh, they throw it in the medical waste bio bin." I'm like, "Where's that?"
No.
And he shows me, and I literally, with no gloves on, I think I took my shirt off. I had like a t-shirt on, and I just start pillaging through the medical waste bin. And I got my shirt back. I'll tell you that much.
Is it? There's like
the blood came out.
Yeah, I had it dry clean like 5 times.
There's a similar. Isn't there a similar?
5 is my lucky number, so I thought I'll just get it dry clean 5 times.
And it worked.
Yeah, I still have the shirt.
I think there's a similar storyline in an episode of Curb Your Enthusiasm where Larry David wants his sweater back from some guy goes to the hospital or something. He wants his sweater back.
Yeah, I'm very much like Larry David. I'm not nearly as talented, but there's that famous story where one night he was doing stand-up, or he was supposed to do stand-up, and I think someone like him and me to a much lesser degree, we have a bizarre stage fright. Like, you wouldn't think Larry David has stage fright or thinks he's not funny, but I think most brilliant comics deep down think, "Am I funny?"
Yeah.
And they say he walked on stage one night. He was the headliner, obviously, and he just looked at the crowd and says into the mic, "Nah, I don't think so." And he just walked off.
Wow.
I've done that a few times.
Yeah.
In the early days, I just wasn't feeling it. I had stage fright or anxiety. And, that's the only bad thing about not drinking or doing drugs, is you have to experience every emotion with complete clarity. So,
yeah.
Like the night I showcased at the Comedy Store, which is, there was so much pressure that night on me because they had fired the racist booker. They brought in this new guy who had seen me do stand-up, and he had every comic in the world calling him, saying, "You got to pass Earl. He's been up there forever. He got fucked over by the last guy. You have to pass him. Just pass him. Don't even showcase him." And, I think all of us are like little kids. When we're told something, you have to do this, you don't want to do it. So he came up to me and he's like, hey, I'm going to showcase you, but if you don't pass, but if you don't do well, I can't pass you. So that night before my showcase, I'm sweating bullets. 20 minutes before my showcase, I'm completely naked on my bathroom floor. And I had some bizarre paralysis I've never had since. And I don't sweat often. Even in hot yoga, I rarely sweat. I don't know if I have weird pores or whatever. But that night it looked like someone had poured 10 gallons of water on me. I was just sweating over the toilet. And so I think most comics, if they had that happening to them, would maybe smoke a joint.
Sure.
Take some, not Molly, but, ecstasy or something. And I couldn't. I was like, so I was beyond. It's probably the most nervous I've ever been in my life.
Wow.
Every comic in the city came that night to see me because
maybe
even the few comics that I'm pretty well liked, but there's probably one or two comics that don't like me. Even they showed up. They wanted me to get past. And I knew when Chris D'Elia walked in the room, and he put it this way: if you weren't a chick, he wasn't going to watch your set. No, and even Chris watched my set. And it all worked out. I had like roast battle, I had a good strategy and it worked. So
you battled through and you still went on.
I battled through. I had and not that 6 minutes is a set. It's not, but I had the best 6 minute set I think you could have. It was like the perfect.
Okay. Were you still sweating when you went on stage?
No. I just literally forced myself through the grace of God or my parents from above or whatever you believe in as a mythical force in your life. It literally picked me up and I had 20 minutes to get ready, and I was like, I can't be late for a showcase of the number one club in the world, and it all worked out. So
obviously, yeah,
here I am.
And here you are, still going strong.
That's awesome. Are you going down to the Comedy Store today or tonight to watch the battle? Do you still go down and watch them?
No, I haven't been in that room in probably 3 years.
Oh yeah.
But I have a spot tonight in the original room. So
awesome.
When is this podcast out?
Probably a couple weeks.
Okay, so
probably like 2 weeks from Monday. We put them out every Monday. So
okay. Well, I was going to invite people. I didn't know if this was live or
no.
But I'm at the store a couple times a week. So if anyone from your show is in LA and wants to come down, they can just DM me on Instagram and I'll take care of them.
Awesome. That is a trip. That's a bucket list item for myself. If I want to get out there and get to the store. So
yeah, I mean, it's hard to explain. It has something that no other club in the city or country has. I think it's the history that it has. Before it was the Comedy Store, it was like the Italian restaurant where or nightclub where like Joe DiMaggio would take Marilyn Monroe. It's the first place Sammy Davis performed after he lost his eye. And obviously they've changed the carpet and stuff and maybe the upholstery a little bit, but that main room stage, which I'm on, 1 to 2 times a week, it's still the stage Sammy Davis stepped on. So
nice.
It's pretty,
it's an honor. Yeah.
Oh, it's my name has been on the wall there for 8 years now, I think. And not a day goes by where I walk by it where it doesn't give me a little chill or like, wow, I'm past here. It's pretty neat.
Yeah, I can only imagine. That's awesome.
That's fantastic. I'd love to see you there.
Well, thank you so much. You've spent a ton of time with us, and we can't thank you enough.
Yes.
Thank you for having me. I mean, I'm sorry my AOL email system was not before. AOL sucks. But,
it all worked out.
It's worth it just being able to say that you're still on AOL. I think.
I know it is kind of a baller move.
It is, yeah. It's like still flipping on a flip phone these days. Like if you're still rocking one of those, you're.
I mean, my cell phone is rotary, so hello. But thank you guys for having me. I mean, it's always neat to talk about your career and
Well, we love it. We're trying more and more to get more and more comedians on. We love comedy, and so we really appreciate you coming on.
And right now, you have an all evening. Promote your stuff.
Oh yeah,
let's promote your podcast and your web pages.
Well, I'm uncomfortable, but the great thing about my plugs is they don't take long because I'm at Earl Skakel on everything. So it's not the Earl Skakel. It's not _Earl /Skakel. It's EARL SKAKEL. Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, TikTok, which I'm not very good at, but I'm trying. And then I have my own podcast called Inappropriate Earl, which is wrestlers, musicians, comics. That's on Apple and SoundCloud. And the newest endeavor I have is the Comedy Store Wrestling Podcast, which is on every platform. It's already doing better than my podcast. 350 episodes in, I still can't get traction. 9 episodes into the Comedy Store, because I don't have to do any of the tech stuff. Like it's already surpassed me.
Yeah.
But if you like pro wrestling, we've had, let me see, we've had Ryan Nemeth, who's Dolph Ziggler's brother. We've had Josh Barnett, who's ex-UFC heavyweight champion. Last night was kind of a cool episode. We had Fred Rosser, who wrestling fans might know also as Dwayne Young. He's the first openly gay pro wrestler.
Okay.
Which is, it was actually a serious podcast. Let me look that up before we go. I think it's Darren Young. I think I just called him Dwayne.
Go ahead, get it right.
His story is fascinating from the standpoint of, to be out in pro wrestling is.
That can't be an easy world to be out in. I would imagine that's kind of like trying to go into an NFL locker room after you've come out. So
it is Darren Young. Sorry about I didn't Dwayne Young. Well, because I asked him this last night, and I was scared because here I'm about to ask a gay themed question to a guy who could kick my ass. But because he was talking about he's a mentor to other wrestlers who are still in the closet, and I asked him, do you think part of their reluctance is how gays have been portrayed in the past by wrestling? And because he actually really liked the question, because if you think back, I'm old enough to remember Adrian Adonis, who he was Jesse Ventura's tag team partner, and he was a badass, but back then he was like a biker. But I think he was in the closet, and then little by little he came out. Toward the end, he was really portrayed by the WWE as a cartoonish fat gay dude.
Sure.
And I'm sure if you're in the closet still, you see a clip of Adrian Adonis basically being made fun of for being gay. You're like, oh, maybe I'll just stay in the closet. And when I went to XPW over the weekend, they had that gay wrestler Angel, the hardcore, and I'll leave it at that. I'm sure if you're in the closet and you're thinking about coming out and you're a pro wrestler and you see a wrestler called Angel the Hardcore, you're like, I'll just stay in the closet.
They're not making it easy for them, but hopefully now they can.
Right.
But it actually meant a lot to me to every now and then I like to do a serious interview. So if you like wrestling, it's on the Comedy Store Network, and please listen to it.
Absolutely.
Awesome. Well, thank you again, sir. Have a great set tonight. And
I do need to say 2 things real quick.
Sure.
It's been one of my favorite things talking about Kiss so much, especially in front of him.
Yeah. Yeah.
So thank you. I appreciate that. And poo-pooing Motley Crue, because that's where they belong.
No, I like them. Don't get me wrong. I
do too. I do
to
too.
be honest with you, just a quick story. I saw Motley Crue last when Alice Cooper opened up for them.
Yeah.
Long story short, I'm not name dropping. It's just how I got to tell the story. I know most of Alice's band, so I see them whenever they're in town. Ryan Roxy.
Well, yeah, and not to interrupt you, but thanks to you, Ryan Roxy liked one of our stories because I think when I promoted you on Raylan, he liked it. So we appreciate it.
And Ryan's a great guitar player, and he's a total showman. And Nita Strauss, they've both been on Inappropriate Earl, but they were opening up, I think, in 2015 for Motley Crue. And I saw in Motley Crue back then, and I'm sure it's even better now. It was a great stage presence or stage performance.
Mm-hmm.
But I will say, when I think the first song was Shout at the Devil, and Vince comes out to the stage looking like he had already run an ultra marathon, just drenched. And you could literally hear him breathing like,
yeah.
And I'm in the front row with my girlfriend at the time. And he puts his microphone literally over my head. He's like, shout. Does it again, shout. And, like Nikki Sixx is really into it. And Mick Mars, I don't know how he's standing. And Tommy Lee's doing all this wacky. And then Vince goes, shout. And I just I'm talking to him because I could touch his pant leg. I'm like, hey, bro, I paid $12.50 for this ticket, $12.50 for her ticket. This ain't karaoke, motherfucker.
Oh, I love it.
Thank you for saying that.
I love it. As much as I love Motley Crue, every word of that is true. So,
but the crazy thing is then they finish Shout at the Devil, and Vince is like, we're going to take it home now. Like, what? That's the first fucking song. And then about 3 songs in, they do a bass solo. And Nikki has this, like a canister or something, excuse me, by his bass. I'm like, what the fuck is that? And then fire starts coming out of it. Okay, cool. And then they must have jumped the gun. They released the confetti. So I got confetti coming over my head, Nikki blasting fire over my head. I'm like, this can't be a good idea.
We start confetti on fire?
And then Tommy's drum kit goes over the crowd. And as a Jew, everything's about money with me. It gets stuck over my head. It literally got stuck. And 2 thoughts. I'm like, one, wow, he really does have a big dick. And then the second thought is, man, the insurance for this shit's got to be out of control.
Oh, yes.
And then last part, and then we all got to go. I was really trying to impress this girl.
Of course.
I noticed they had a thing. I thought front row tickets, that's a good start. And then I surprised her. I'm like, hey, about halfway in, I'm like, hey, I got a surprise for you. So we don't leave the venue, but we leave our seats. We go to the dressing room. And for $500 each, I paid for us to have a meet and greet with Alice Cooper, figuring there's not going to be that many people who can afford that. There'd probably be a couple people. And turns out there was literally 5 people. So the first 3 people, they'd meet them, say hello, get an autograph or whatever. And she was really young. She was 27 years younger than me. Everything was legal. Let's throw that out there. I'm sure some of your fan base is going, wait a minute, 27 years younger than you.
Verge, but you're there.
So when you were 25, she was -2. Hello. So Alice really liked her because she was an old soul, and she's talking about, I loved $1 billion babies and like all that stuff. And then I thought, I'm going to try and be funny because I'm the last guy in line. So they motioned for me to go over to Alice. And he's sitting down, I'm standing up, and he extends his hand for a handshake. I'm like, hey, man, it's an honor to meet you for $500. He did not laugh.
Oh, yeah. Well, it was worth a try.
And yeah, I one more thing, and this is it. I swear to God, now I'm getting into plugging shit.
Do it, but I want to know if the evening turned out worth the money.
Trust me, this girl's a whore. It did. I mean, she left quite an impression on me and my air mattress. She loved food, though. When I pulled out, there was a turkey on my dick. If you like the jellies, probably the most important thing I've ever done. So it's on HBO Max, Cartoon Network, and Adult Swim. Please watch it. Maybe get an online campaign going, hey, bring it back.
Bring it back.
There
Every
you go.
jelly needs some paper.
Oh, that's awesome. Thank you so much.
Thank you, boys. I'll see you soon.
All right.
Have a great
Take it
evening.
easy, man.
Likewise. Listen to some Kiss right now.
Heck yeah.
Fuck it.
I want to now.
Thank you for listening. The tavern is closed for now, but we'd love to have you back for more fun next time. Seriously, though, get your asses out of here.